It's the AM show or nothing else. Thank you for making the time to join us this beautiful Wednesday morning. From Bernice and yours truly, we say thank you for your company. And of course, we kick-started the show with another beautiful exploration of Nzulezu, as we all know it, that village on stilts. Well, let's give you a fair idea what to expect on the rest of the program. I'll be serving you the news shortly, but then we have the news review with Dr. Kwame Asas-Santi. He's a political scientist at the University of Ghana, also director of the Center for European Studies at that same institution. But then we get into our big stories, and the first one we're contemplating is a conversation with the NDPC, the National Development Planning Commission, and ACET, the African Center for Economic Transformation. They've come together to put up something we call the Ghana Compact. So 66 years on, how far have we come? What more is left to do? And what are the dynamics that can transform us economically, socially, and beyond? We have that conversation with the Director General of the NDPC, Dr. Kojo Mensah Abrampa. He is our guest on that beat. But right after that, it's World Consumer Rights Day, and we'll be taking you all the way to the Coconut Grove Hotel. Sometime after 8 o'clock, that's where many leaders across the world are converging, and we're going to be having a conversation from there in our own consumer rights experience. Stay tuned for that one, also coming up on the show. But today being a Wednesday, of course, would be coming your way courtesy of EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank, with AM Business. So what are we talking about today? James Ashan, my colleague, explores the traditional wood carving for fishing canoe business in Briwa in the central region of Ghana. That's what we have lined up for you this morning, and you want to catch up with that one. How the canoes are fashioned, of course, all of that fitting into our Ghana Month series as well. Well, that's it. That's the beat for today. Just stay with us. Stay tuned. Up next, we bring you all the tidbits in the world of news. Thank you for staying for the news. And in our first story, government is set to reintroduce road tolls with a 100% increment. In November 2021, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announced the immediate suspension of the collection of road tolls during the presentation of the budget. He cited congestion and traffic jams at the toll booths as justification for the suspension of the collection. But Deputy Roads Minister Stephen Jalula tells JoyNews government is reintroducing the tolls because the e-levy is not performing.
When the e-levy came in, the government decided that the road tolls were going to be scrapped. Okay, so, but even before that particular budget was approved, there was chaos on all our tolling booths. So my boss thought it wise that there was no need for a life to be lost before this happened. Yeah. And we knew that the good Parliament was going to, give us the approval. So he wrote that it should be suspended. Right. Okay, road tolls were only suspended pending the approval of the budget. Yes, we used to get around 78 million per year, and that's a lot of money and can do something. Right. But then in the e-levy was a component of a chunk of money. Okay. If we had approved e-levy at that distance, and if the e-levy had worked the way it was conceived, I'm sure that we will not be talking about this today. But unfortunately, the e-levy failed us. It didn't work out the way we planned it. And that is why we are not talking about it. I know that over time, decision makers, the cabinet, the president's cabinet will come out again. If we are to introduce road tolls, why not? If we feel that we should, but let me also say that road tolls in Ghana was the least in the sub-region. You paid
in terms of how much
we paid. Okay. We paid 50 pesos. Meanwhile, they said you pay 50 pesos, but you want to have quality roads like we see in the advanced countries. It's very difficult.
Well, on our second story, the National Democratic Congress is questioning the basis on which the Electoral Commission prioritizes the stake of smaller political parties in major decision-making affecting the interests of major parties with representation in Parliament. Since 2021, the NDC has declined invitations to participate in the Inter-Party Advisory Committee to discuss election-related matters. Chairman of the NDC, Johnson Esiedun Ketia, says the Electoral Commission's preferred solution by using the Ghana card will not solve all the problems affecting the Electoral Commission.
Before you make any new law, the first thing you do is, what is wrong with the existing system which I'm seeking to correct? Can you take a brand new vehicle to a workshop and then say that I have to change, you have to work on my vehicle? They ask you what is wrong with the vehicles. I don't know. They might think there's something wrong upstairs. So the Electoral Commission has so far not told Ghanaians what is wrong with the existing law.
The chairperson has been to Parliament. She says they want to do away with, for instance, the guarantor system, and that the Ghana card is part of that solution.
Why are they doing away with the guarantor system when the guarantor system is used to procure the Ghana card itself, which you want to use? Is the guarantor system good or bad? The guarantor system cannot be bad, cannot be good when you are using it to procure the national ID card. And then when you want to register people using the national ID card, you certainly feel that the guarantor system is bad. It's like somebody who declares that he doesn't want to eat maize or corn, and yet he can eat kenke.
Yes. And you have another opportunity with the IPAC, the Inter-Party Advisory Committee. It's a platform that was created, and you've served, you've been a member, you've attended these sessions over the years until recently when the party had some challenges with that forum. Will you use the IPAC as a means of channeling your grievances to the Electoral Commission?
IPAC is one of the institutions that has been weaponized. In this interview, I told you that the state institutions are gradually being weaponized. These are the things we must work at to make sure that IPAC delivers on its mandate. If not, we are not going to be participants because nobody will be allowed to use NDC as a rubber stamp for any wrong decisions.
So unless the reforms, you handle your concerns.
We put these cards on the table.
Right.
Luckily, when there is conflict, we have a state institution that works at the conflict to make sure that there is a resolution and there is peace, and that's the National Peace Council.
Well, from the politics, let's talk health now. And the ranking member on Parliament's Health Committee, Kwabena Minta Akando, says claims by President Akufo-Addo and his Minister of Health that no person died as a result of vaccine shortages is false. Debating the State of the Nation address in Parliament, the Dwaboso MP cited a pediatrician and claimed that up to 5 persons died due to the shortage. Kukwa Asante has more in the following report.
Health and security dominated today's debate in Parliament, with Minta Akando disputing government's claims that no lives were lost due to vaccine shortages.
Mr. Speaker, the President on this floor of the House said that we had recorded no death. The Minister also repeated on this floor that no death has been recorded. Mr. Speaker, that is again palpable falsehood. Mr. Speaker, according to the Northern Regional Pediatrician at Tamale Teaching Hospital, Professor Anum Al-Hassan, Mumin Al-Hassan, the Speaker, he says that we have recorded about 5 fatalities.
Only this weekend, government received 6 weeks worth of vaccines, but did not disclose where it came from. According to Kwabena Minta Akando, the vaccines came from Nigeria and urged government to come clean on the matter.
Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, we heard that Ghana has taken delivery of some vaccines, but what they didn't add was that these vaccines were coming from Nigeria. Mr. Speaker, these vaccines were coming from Nigeria. Of course, I have absolutely no problem if FDA confirms that these are good vaccines. But Mr. Speaker, the bigger question is that how come Nigeria has excess vaccines and we don't have?
MP for Doma East, Paul Chumberima, and Minister of State, Frida Prempeh, also debated on the majority side.
I heard most of my colleagues from the majority side talking about roads infrastructure, and my colleagues on the other side were trying to say as if that we've not constructed anything. We will tout that we have constructed more roads than the NDC. We will tout that we've been able to add over 50,000 kilometers to our roads infrastructure. Whether feeder roads, whether highways, whether urban roads, we have done more than the NDC did in the last few years.
Mr. Speaker, all is well. And that is my senior colleague Akando saying all is not well. I find it a bit strange because he knows that all is well with him.
The debate on the message on the state of the nation presented by President Akufo-Addo last week to Parliament will continue until Thursday, when leadership on both sides are expected to conclude the debate. Today, much of the debate focused on health and security, with Benjamin Akakpo, as you've heard there, lamenting the vaccine shortage and saying that even the latest consignment that government has received will only last about 6 weeks, and government must get some more permanent source of supply for the country. He has also been talking about the Agenda 111, which government said it would conclude by the time President Akufo-Addo leaves office. He says that government is not being truthful, and so far from the data they have received, some of these health facilities will be concluded way beyond 2027, even when the NPP will not be in office. The minority have been speaking against the message the president delivered. They say he has offered no hope to Ghanaians, while the NPP says the president delivered a message, although admitting that there's a crisis, but offered hope in terms of where the country will be going next. Reporting for JoyNews, Kweku Asante, Parliament House, Accra.
Well, let's stay on health as we go to the Upper West region. And for almost 2 years, a theatre lamp at the West District Hospital has broken down. As a result, doctors at the hospital are forced to combine 2 or 3 mobile phones in order to generate light for surgery on patients. The situation, according to the medical superintendent of the West District Hospital, Dr. Benjamin Akakpo, is impeding work at the theatre and thus greatly affecting healthcare at that facility. Rafiq Salam, my colleague, now reports from Wa.
Among the plethora of challenges faced by the West District Hospital is a lack of a theatre lamp. The theatre lamp for 2 years has broken down. Authorities at the hospital have made several attempts to repair it, but has not yielded the desired results. Medical Superintendent of the West District Hospital, Dr. Benjamin Akakpo, says the lack of a theatre lamp is greatly affecting healthcare delivery at the theatre.
Permit me to say that it's only one that we have. Ideally, we should have had an overhead one and then a standing one. But we've had a standing one for the years now, and unfortunately that only one that we had also broke down. It's really affecting service because the lamp is the second eye for us, for both the nurses and the doctors. When you are doing an operation, you have your own eyes, but when you are operating and you go into a cavity, a body cavity, you will not be able to see clearly. And it's like walking in the night without a torchlight. You would see that the movement will be difficult. In the same way, navigating our way through the surgical procedures that we do is a bit challenging, but we've had to do without them for close to 7 to 8 months now.
How is he able to perform surgeries without the theatre lamp?
There are times you would have to ask 2 or 3 people to help with their lives. Let me just give you an example. Just this Monday, we had a man who came in with a gastric perforation with peritonitis. In layman terms, a hole in the stomach. And we needed to close the hole to avoid the contents from the stomach from leaking out into the entire cavity. And I had to use 2 lights, one on one side and another on another side, phone lights, to be able to see clearly and continue with the procedure. God being so good, we're able to do it with the experiences that we've had and the commitment of the staff that we have. We are able to do, but it's really challenging because you have to strain your eyes and strain your eyes to be able to do it. And honestly speaking, it's very challenging.
Although they have appealed to the West Member of Parliament, Superintendent retired Peter Lenchini Tubu, West District Assembly, corporate organizations, and benevolent individuals to come to their aid. They are, however, looking at what they can do internally to fix the challenge.
You know, usually most of these things we start with in-house. We have looked at our own capacity and we thought of getting it by ourselves. However, it's a bit expensive. When we made the inquiries, I think it's over 30,000. The last one we got was around 35. That was even about 6 to 7 months ago, and I don't know how it will be now. So we solicited the support of the Member of Parliament for West, and he promised, he made us get the bills of quantities for him, and he promised getting us one. Unfortunately, maybe we haven't gotten it yet. And also the District Assembly has been brought in the known. We are by this appealing to other external organizations who can come to our aid. This is a deprived community, and we have sacrificed to be here to offer the best that we can for the people. And even to be operating for this number of months without the lamp is a testament of the sacrifices that we are willing to go the extra mile to help, but we need support.
Reporting for JoyNews, Rafik Salam, Wachao.
Let's go to the Volta region now. And the newly installed Paramount Chief of Ziope, Togbi Bina Lauluvi VII, has promised to build on the legacies of his predecessor. He says he will also drive both human and infrastructural development in the area. He pledged this when kingmakers outdoored him at Ziope in the Agotime Ziope district of the Volta region.
The ceremony saw a display of authentic Ziope culture and tradition. Togbi Bina Lauluvi VII, known in private life as Frank Gasese, is the Western Regional Director of the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority. At a short coronation ceremony, oaths were exchanged between Togbi Bina and chiefs from the Ziope and Agotime traditional areas. Other traditional rites were also performed to signify his ascension to the throne as Paramount Chief of Ziope traditional area. He thus promised to lead the area to prosperity, promising to deliver to the expectation of his kinsmen and subjects.
Abadada vizaze bejibe ma nofia makata bune jofunu to amakata edo imi dashi na mu ndokutu ya le mawuvir ple mawuto ple mawugbowo ko kera be nkome a mawe wajeji na mi adole bejibe ma don kujina mi be ne mi to aba medeka de kan ya inse la mesha meshi wa wonu ije unbe wa wo. The
chief warlord of the Agotime traditional area, Nene Akutosa VII, implored the two traditional areas to continue to live in peace and harmony.
agotime zofe agotime zofe nuka gadodua kekele miamea ejebe nenye deka ejebe miavio kokole school deleja mimi ganabe wa yide dugaga ome afia ba odo be bomia odeka nusoso deka ne miako nuka miako do dofe de assembly ame kem miavio chere o ma gaba yaba no electricity water bill petrol makemo utility bills over eleki.
Togbi Bina Lavlevi VII researched the streets of Ziopi and later swore an oath of commitment to the people at the community center. He has a master's degree in mining engineering, postgraduate diploma in organization development, among other certificates. Fred Kwame Asari, JoyNews, Ziopi.
On our final story, green climate clubs have been inaugurated in 10 senior high schools in the northern region. The capacity of members of these clubs will be built to advocate for climate sustainability and environmental development. The formation of these clubs is to help nature climate smart generation that is sensitive to climate change.
The Ghana Meteorological Authority and its partners aim at capacitating every Ghanaian child with the knowledge and understanding on climate sustainability. A strategy GMET is employing to increase knowledge of the students on climate change and its associated impact on health, agriculture, food production, among others. Speaking at the inauguration, the Northern Regional Minister, Shani Alhassan Shaibu, who raised concerns over the impact of climate change on food security in the area, said the inauguration was timely.
Aware that the Northern region experiences irregular rainfall patterns and protracted droughts, which have an impact on food security and economic hardship for many communities. Dense heat waves have also been prevalent in the area, which has led to an increase in ailments and related heart diseases due to the heat. As a result, I anticipate that the club will play a significant role in enlightening young people in the northern region about the impacts of climate change.
The acting director of GMET, Eric Esuma, said there was the need to create awareness using opportunity like the school clubs.
In addressing these issues, we have become aware that environment and climate change education is lacking, especially among the youth. However, there's opportunity to create awareness among students and young people through the introduction of climate clubs in high schools. The Green Climate Clubs therefore seeks to give an immense scope to especially high school students to gain a deeper knowledge and understanding of climate sustainability and environmental development. The vision of this club is to nurture climate smart generation, the generation that is sensitive to climate change, generation whose decisions are influenced by their impact on the climate, and a generation who are empowered to take action on issues related to climate change.
Deputy Minister for Communications and Digitalization, Ama Pomabwati, who represented the sector minister, said the ministry will continue to establish more clubs in many schools as they can to advocate among their peers.
Today, as we launch this Green Climate Clubs in the various high schools here present, the intention is to spread knowledge about climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. We will continue with our partners to establish climate clubs in as many schools as we can to prepare students to take action on issues related to climate change, supporting SDG 30 prosperity and the nation's socio-economic development.
And on that climatic note, we cap off the news. But stay with us. Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante joins us as we dig into the papers. We'll be right back. Welcome back on the AM show. Time now for the news review, but a few messages from those who make all of this possible. Let's start with that big event today. And the Chartered Institute of Marketing Ghana, that is the CIMG, in commemoration of World Consumer Rights Day, is organizing a breakfast panel discussion tomorrow, or today, I beg your pardon, at the Coconut Grove Hotel. That is at 8 a.m. Today. The discussion seeks to raise the awareness of consumer rights and highlights the rights from the perspectives of FMCG, telecommunications, and the healthcare industry. Scheduled speakers include Kwame Wiafe of Wilma Africa Limited, Think Fritol, and the rest. Theodore Albright, the Family Office Africa. Agnes Emefa Issa of the Nyaho Medical Center. And Reverend Jansa Lutrot, Bridgefield Law Partners. And you do know that the discussion will be live on JoyNews and on social media. So watch out for that at the top of the hour, 8 o'clock, heading towards 9. We're bringing you the scoop on that. Let's get into the news review now, and it's brought to you courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and we're offering free prostate screening, free female fertility screening as well. If you're interested, here's where you can locate us. In Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. In Kumasi, Kronoma, we're here behind the Angel Educational Complex. In Takrady, Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, Esiama, and Zema as well. You can find us dotted across the country. How can you reach us via the phone line? 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But let's get into the news review now. And we're joined by Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. He is a political scientist at the University of Ghana, also the director for the Center for European Studies. Doc, thank you for your company this morning. Hello, Doc.
Yeah, good morning, Ben.
Really good to have you. And my apologies if I've kept you for a while. So let's dig right into the salient stories. But before we do, this one that has come up, the restoration of road tolls. I'm sure you may have followed some of the posts on social media and the talk. We had Deputy Roads Minister Stephen Jalula with us sharing his thoughts on that. I think I recall back then our conversations on road tolls being scrapped and how much they generated per day, per month, and how we were going to bleed. Now it has come out, just as we said, that the e-levy is not performing and we have to go back to road tolls, which is now going to be a bit of a novelty after many months of people not going through the process, not paying. And there have been increments as well. What's your reaction to all of this?
It's unfortunate that we scrapped that thing. I don't know what went into that decision, leading to its abandonment for the first time. It was just an ill advice, if it was any advice given to. And who was the source of that advice is still worrying. Because this is something that was giving us some little money. It doesn't matter how small it was, but, you know, it was helping one way or the other. We're getting people employed through that process, and then getting little money, and then we're using it to maintain the roads and then, you know, get business going. And all of a sudden, we had a certain excuse that is creating all manner of problems, including environmental problems and the rest of them. Let us ask whether the problems they identify, now they fix them, for which reason they want to reintroduce this. All right. I think I'm not sure that they fixed anything. That decision was not good enough.
Let's get into some.
I am happy that they brought it back, and then I am happy they brought it back, and then I want us to make sure that they maintain it and then work to improve it so that it can really serve the purpose for which that program was introduced.
Well, let's get into the papers now. The Daily Graphic: Nation rewards excellence and sacrifice. There's also constitutional review, not panacea for development. Professor Nana SKB Asante, he shared his thoughts, these thoughts with me a few days ago, and here he is again, sharing the same thoughts. Road tolls coming back, new rates proposed in memorandum, and then Ghana Cote d'Ivoire move to address pollution of Bia and Tano rivers. And of course, we have been receiving the short end of the stick in recent times, in fact, in a number of years now, because our neighbors have taken us on for polluting our waters, which lead into their waters. So the watchdog role, basically, we are failing to play, and which is why it is worrying, very worrying, and I'll not stop saying this, when you have the likes of the Member of Parliament for Takwa Nsuayem, also a Deputy Lands and Natural Resources Minister, who will come and tell barefaced lies to Ghanaians, when we know that at a point in the year, the sea would push back the Ankobra, and you would see some cleanness, and then, it would come back around the estuary, taking photos there and telling us that all is well. Let's stop that, because then you make people incensed, even more angry. But let's get into the stories. Some Ghanaians who have excelled in their various fields of national endeavor over the years yesterday received national honors and were presented with awards for their meritorious services, hard work, sacrifices, and contribution to national development. The awards were dominated by workers in the health sector and their leaders who are at the forefront of the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as individuals and organizations that supported the fight. 47 national icons in various national endeavors were given the Order of the Volta for their exploits and their sacrifices for the country, while in the event brochure, it was stated that 19,557 frontline health workers across the country were also being recognized for their roles. All the awards were presented by the President, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. Now, 47 Ghanaians were decorated with medals and sashes in 3 categories under the Order of the Volta. They included members of the National COVID-19 Task Force, trustees of the Ghana COVID-19 Private Sector Fund, and the team that executed and won Ghana's case at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea against Cote d'Ivoire. Now, here's where it also gets interesting. I saw a post yesterday. Charles Nee Tego is an executive assistant and head of social media office of the president, that is Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. And he posted this: lawyer Marietta Brew Apia Opong and lawyer Fui Chikata wrote to decline the National Honors Awards as members of Ghana's legal team at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. Sad. That is what he put there. And as we see here, they were to receive the Order of the Volta, but based on their own convictions, they turned it down. What do you make of these honors, and what do you make of these people who did so well for us, winning that dispute, but declined this award? Doc.
Ben, I must say that the last bit of your question, I miss it. If you can recap it so that I can follow from there.
Right. So I was asking
some names.
I was asking. I think you missed out. So I was saying that Charles Nee Tego is an executive assistant at the office of the president. He is, just to get the title right, head of social media, office of the president, and he posted lawyer Marietta Brew Apia Opong, remember her, and lawyer Fui Chikata wrote to decline the National Honors Awards as members of Ghana's legal team at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. You remember that dispute with the Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire? And he adds, sad.
Yes.
That is what he says. They were to receive, I think, the Order of the Volta together with the team that won Ghana's case at the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea against Cote d'Ivoire. What do you make of these awards, first of all? And second, these two who decided on principle that they would not accept these awards. What do you make of their stance?
Yeah, I'll look at the award itself. It's a good one, and it's in line with the president's duty as head of state. As a head of state, he is the fount of honor. He gives award to, and they are recognized. So the president did exactly that by, playing that role as the fount of honor. If you look at the categories of people that the award were given to, I support that. The COVID group, people who were excellent, and I also commend them for that. He talked about some private sector people, and you remember that, or you and I know that the private.
Hello, Doc. Well, it appears this morning the internet connection is not really helping us, or maybe there are some calls coming through. Doc, we keep losing you, but please go ahead. I can hear you now.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead. Doc, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me, Ben?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Yes. I was saying that I also support the awards. If you look at the fact that these people were honored, it's a good thing, because a country which does not honor its citizens is not worth dying for. And that exercise is in line with the president's duty as a head of state. He's a fount of honor. He gives honors and awards to deserving citizens. So he carried that, and I think it's a right thing to do. If you look at the category of people who were awarded, and you realize that it's also a good thing. Talk about the COVID team. They did a lot to keep you and I alive. So I dove my heart for them. It's a great work that they did, and it's appropriate. They are recognized. If you look at the private sector, a mention of the private sector, which you and I know is the engine of growth within the political and economic spheres of the country. So the private sector was a good thing that the award to. The Cote d'Ivoire issue, Ghana's battle with Cote d'Ivoire with regard to the controversy on our water bodies. We are talking about the sea limit. You saw the contribution of Madame Brew and the other colleague. They did a great job, but I'm surprised. And Fui Chikita. I am surprised that the tennis down. I don't know what went into that decision, but I want to respect their decision, and that we move on. You can't force somebody to receive an award that he's not interested in. So I respect that, and I'll move on. But I think that going forward, when we're giving award, we'll look at all the rest that we need to know, and then we'll make sure that from the word go, we'll get those who will be ready to accept it before finally they turn it down. But I think I respect their decision.
Well, let's get into the stories on page 13. Road tolls coming back, as I intimated, and the government is taking steps to reintroduce road and bridge tolls to shore up domestic revenue. The reintroduction will also come with an upward adjustment in the tolls by an average of 88.5%, including outliers of 400%, the highest percentage increase, and 33.33%, the lowest increment. Already, the Ministry of Finance has made a proposal on the new rates to include in a new legislative instrument to amend the Fees and Charges, that is Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2022, Act 1080. The memorandum from the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, dated March 10, is seeking the input of the Minister of Roads and Highways, Kwesi Amoako-Atta, on the proposed new rates that cars paying 50 Ghana pesos must now pay 1 Ghana cedi under the amended LI, while pickups, light-duty trucks, and mammy wagons must now pay 1 cedi 50 pesos, up from the previous 1 Ghana cedi. Heavy buses and light goods trucks will now move away from paying 1 cedi 50 pesos to paying 2 cedis, while medium good trucks, that is 3 axles, and heavy duty goods trucks, that is 4 axles, will now pay 3 cedis from 2 Ghana cedis, which is what they were paying before. So in this instance, it was scrapped. But now it appears, now that it is coming back, it's coming back to bite hard. And you remember, you know, it's been mentioned that the e-levy is simply not performing. Stephen Jalula said that. And since it is not performing, road tolls are coming back, and this time they are going to be increased to a large extent. There's also constitutional review, not panacea for development. Professor Nana SKB Asante and an eminent constitutional expert, Professor Nana Susubribi Probia Boateng Asante, has expressed his disagreement with the numerous calls for constitutional review, saying that mere amendment of the text of the Constitution will not necessarily improve the fortunes of the country. He says, in my humble view, we will not get development by just amending the Constitution. In fact, we will not get constitutionalism by just amending the text of the Constitution. If you look at the history of many countries, economic takeoff did not happen when there was a liberal constitutional order. I found the last part interesting. It did not happen when there was a liberal constitutional order. How do you react to these two stories, especially the one from SKB Asante? Doc? It appears we cannot reach Doc. The connection is bad. Maybe we'll try to reach him via the phone lines instead. That just might work for us. On pages 16 and 17, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire moved to address pollution of Bia and Tano rivers, and high-powered interministerial delegations from Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana have met right here in Accra to find ways of protecting transboundary water resources, forest cover, and land for mutual benefits. Key among the discussions is finding long-lasting and sustainable solutions to the ripple effect of illegal small-scale mining in Ghana on transboundary water resources between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, which is said to be having adverse effects on potable water production and agriculture in Cote d'Ivoire. So like I intimated earlier, neighboring countries from Burkina Faso to the Ivory Coast to others have complained about our treatment of water bodies. And you know why? Galamsey. Yes, that is why. And as we pollute our water bodies, these water bodies, like the Nile, flows from different countries all the way to other countries. You would notice parts of the Nile, for example, flowing through all the way through Sudan, all the way to Egypt. So same with our water bodies. And as they flow together, if we contaminate them, they get contaminated and affect the water resources of other countries. This is how bad it has become now. It's not just affecting us, it's affecting our neighbors. And of course, we need to do this, talk about the situation. On the back page of the Daily Graphic, UPSA inaugurates a 1,664-bed hostel and KMA to clear containers and kiosks along major roads. The Ghanaian Times this morning, government to pay bondholders in 48 hours. And there was a lot of talk in recent days. Finally, the Finance Ministry had to come out with a statement. The processes have been followed and payment will be made shortly. But bondholders issued a 48-hour ultimatum. So the time has been shifted back. And we'll see whether in 48 hours these bondholders will get their receipts on their coupons. Welcome back, Doc. I just wanted your quick take, very quickly, because of time, on Professor Nana Dr. SKB Asante, or Professor Nana SKB Asante, what he says about the Constitution in terms of amendment and the fact that liberal constitutions do not necessarily foster development. What do you make of his stance, very briefly? Hello, Doc? Well, let's get into that story. And so there's also, before I get into the bondholder issue, Ghana hosts U.S. Vice President's spouse March 25. And there's also Finance Ministry recommends fees, charges for new road tolls. Let's go to page 12 and start from there. So the Ministry of Finance says it has commenced processes to settle payments on outstanding bonds. To this end, It has assured bondholders whose coupons and principals matured on February 6th and 13th this year to expect payment within the next 48 hours. That is their promise. This was contained in a statement issued by the Public Relations Unit of the Ministry in Accra yesterday. And quoting what it says, the initial instruction covers coupon and principal payments on bonds that matured on February 6, 2023 and February 13, 2023. Holders of the aforelisted bonds should therefore expect to receive their payments within the next 48 hours, the statement noted. It said payment dates for subsequent maturities would be communicated in due course as the processing continues. And they said that there was no problem with funding, that they had the money to make the payments. But the bondholders issued a 48-hour ultimatum. The coalition of individual bondholder groups has given the Ministry of Finance a 48-hour ultimatum to pay all matured principal and outstanding coupons due on the existing bonds issued by the government of Ghana. This followed the expiration of the deadline by the government to pay all coupons and maturing principals on March 13. So I guess we'll play a game of wait and see. Time will tell. We'll wait and see whether all of those payments will be made. But let me just do that final story on page 5 of the paper. Ghana will on March the 25th play host to the Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris, and her spouse, Douglas Emhoff. The visit of the first ever female Vice President of the USA forms part of a 3-nation tour of Africa. After her stay in Ghana, she is also expected to visit Tanzania and Zambia. A statement issued by the White House on Monday has revealed. And so on March the 25th, American Vice President Kamala Harris will be in town. The Finder newspaper audit of Kennedy Apon's businesses is standard practice, not harassment. And there's been talk about the GRA harassing that businessman, who is also a member of parliament for Asin Central. We'll be giving you some details of that story. Bank of Ghana receives national honor for vital role in COVID-19 fight. I already told you about the list of honors. I will install real-time collation system in 2024 for NDC. That's according to Dr. Kwabena Dufour, former governor, former finance minister. Ghana, Ivory Coast tackle river pollution caused by illegal mining activities. More from our end, basically. Let's own it, because that is our reality. But let's get to page 5 and take a quick look at that. So the Ghana Revenue Authority has denied allegations made by the Member of Parliament for the Asin Central constituency and presidential aspirant for the ruling MPP Kennedy Ejapong during a media interview where he accused the GRA of harassment. This accusation follows a visit to one of his factories, which is currently under construction by officials of the GRA. According to the MP, who claimed that since he declared his presidential ambitions, his businesses have become the subjects of constant probing by the revenue authorities. However, the GRA, in its rebuttal, indicated that as part of its mandate and in line with World Customs Organization's guidelines in ensuring adherence to best practices, such exercises are regularly conducted. The purpose of such audits, they explain, are, quote, to measure and improve compliance while fine-tuning controls. And that is the response there. There is also Speaker Bagbin reiterates Ghana's commitment to collaborate with Inter-Parliamentary Union, that is to fight intolerance and promote peaceful coexistence in society. Those are the stories there. Let me take a quick look at the story on page 8 as well. So, major contender for NDC flag bearer 2024, Dr. Kwabena Dufour, has told party delegates to elect him as presidential candidate of the party if they want a real-time state-of-the-art collation system during the 2024 general election. Well, the case has been made in respect of what happened during the 2020 election and the NDC's control room, if you like, and the fact that they lost their way along the way, while apparently the ruling administration had more technical support, more of an integrated, setup by which they were able to track the votes. And that is why he is saying, on the back of that, he is saying that he would install real-time collation systems for the NDC if given the nod. I just have a question, though. I mean, I find this interesting on the back of what happened in 2020 and the problems that arose. But is that to say that if Dr. Dufour did not win, he would not lend his support in putting up this system? I'm only asking a question. The Ghanaian publisher, Ghana addresses Galamsey-related water pollution. Some of these headlines sometimes. Yes, they are seeking to address it. They've not addressed it, and it remains a problem and a bit of a shame to us, especially as now we're having to face the angst of our neighboring countries. The African Development Bank strengthens agribusiness financing with new strategy. Minister eats humble pie. The Ghanaian publisher, Minister eats humble pie as toll fees go up. We said it, no one listened, and now it is coming back with a fury, with a vengeance. Maintain the road tolls. We're making how much? Is it over 200,000 or is it over 100,000 per day? We said no, e-levy. And now, so you know what this means? It means the ordinary Ghanaian is already battered, bruised on the back of the economic turmoil. The e-levy is being retained, and now we have this coming back. So you get it. We took this away and gave you the e-levy. The e-levy will stay, but the road tolls are also coming back. Did we go or did we come? GRA refutes Kenneth Japon's allegations that Akufo-Addo Lord's Catholic Church's role in Ghana's development. That's in the Ghanaian publisher. Now, Daily Guide, US VIP to visit Ghana. Aspire higher, Omanhene urges education minister. Controller staff reject Toyota Camry for V8. And there's also Samira Baumia Bag's law degree. On social media, there was talk about her after many years going through the COVID era and all of that, finally sailing through on the support of family and friends to bag that degree, I believe from the University of London. We salute her on that exploit. Let me just do the story on page 6 as we wrap the discussion, the news review, right before we get into sports. Let's go. Yes, there is that story. So some staff of the Controller and Accountant General's Department have rejected an allocation of saloon cars to the department. The staff, who have developed a taste for luxurious goods, say they want Land Cruiser V8s for their bosses. According to them, allocations of Toyota Camrys to management and senior staff does not befit their status. Hence, it must be changed. The staff, whose responsibilities are keeping and disbursing public funds, are unhappy that deputy directors in other government agencies, including the Ministry of Finance, are driving four-wheel drive vehicles while their bosses are being compelled to drive Toyota Camry, a saloon car. So look at it. I get it. It must be the same strokes for the same folk, right? If we're doing the same work, practically occupying the same positions, then what is done for Peter must be done for Paul. But again, it's about the sort of taste we've given, the sort of excesses we have brought to bear. So now we feel entitled to V8s. Wow. Now that's an interesting development, but who can blame them? The politicians are doing it. Some appointees of the politicians are doing it. So I guess everybody must feel entitled. I found the story rather interesting and just wanted to run it by you. Who knows, one of these days I just might share some blunt thoughts on some of this madness that is going on in our system. But on that note, we cap off the news review this morning. Let me just remind you that this segment is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and they're offering you free screening. If it's your prostate you want to check out, go to them. If it's free female fertility screening you want, go to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Where can you locate them? Here in Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. If you're in Kumasi, Kronum Abwehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex. If you're in Takrade, locate them at Anaji Estate, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hansua, and in Zema is Siama. That's how you can locate them. Their call lines are 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Yesterday in the Champions League, Manchester City, reminiscent of what Liverpool did to Manchester United, Manchester City thrashed Salzburg, that is it RS or Salzburg, by 7 goals to nothing. And guess, the wonder kid on the block Yeah, you know him. Erling Haaland bagged 5 goals and was substituted. He wasn't happy about that, but they thrashed the Salzburg team. You can stay tuned for that and more as we bring you sports. Do stay.
Muftar Abla here with sports on the AM show. In the next couple of days, Rugby Africa will be assembling to elect a new leader. Rugby Football Union of Ghana, Herbert Mensah, who is also a former Chief Executive Officer of Kumasi Asante Kotoko, has put himself up to contest for the position of President of Rugby Africa. Speaking to Al Jazeera, he said it's about time the sport in the continent is monetized
by the Nigeria Rugby Football Federation to run for presidency. Herbert Mensah, a current member of the African Rugby Executive Committee, is also an accomplished businessman with many years of experience in Africa's business and sports sectors. In 2014, Mensah took the helm at the Ghana Rugby Football Union, where he significantly increased awareness around the sport while injecting much enthusiasm for players and officials, as well as encouraging the youth to participate in rugby through numerous initiatives and activities. He was instrumental in spearheading the national team's qualification in the World Series after they won the West African competition before moving on to the African Championship. Mensah's vision is to build a positive and strong brand for Rugby Africa and to make rugby more accessible and visible to all Africans, in particular the youth.
Sport is big business. It's no use being what we have been over the last decades of coming in and then expecting that somebody will assist us, because there are inequalities. We do understand that World Rugby, we're not a priority for them. So now we need to raise our bar so we can go back to World Rugby and say, look, you give us about $2 million a year or there and thereabouts. Yet somebody from Rugby Europe can get 5 million quid a year just for one country. We have 2 votes at the AGM for choosing the next president of World Rugby. England has 3 alone, France has 3 alone, and so on and so forth. So look, we're not getting up there and saying, give us 39 votes or 34 votes, the number of countries that are registered playing rugby within Africa. But we need to get greater equity. So you now need to monetize it. We now need to bring people on board who are commercially linked and commercially minded. We need to put programs on board. We need to get back to governments. We need to get back to global structures that will help us with training, kit supply, balls, sponsorship, to have leagues, competitions, put it into a chronology and say, how do we roll out where we're going, working with the great team from World Rugby, because they're extraordinary people there, and let them understand that, look, work with us in this area and that area. We will work with you in this area and that area. And look, by 2024, 2025, Africa will be back on the map.
The election will take place at the Rugby Africa's annual general meeting in Cape Town on 18th March 2023 to elect the president and other executives for a period of 4 years, commencing immediately after the results are announced by the executive committee. This will also be the first time in the history of Rugby Africa that elections will be contested.
Good luck to Herbert Mensah as he seeks to head Rugby Africa. The election is happening this Saturday. Let's talk some boxing now. And in Tokyo 2020 Olympics, Ghana's only medalist was Samuel Echechi. He was supervised by Black Mama's head coach Ofori Asari. He says that the boy has got a quality to become a world champion.
Majority of the world champions are Olympians and Olympic medalists. So I was thinking that no, all our champions who we have, most of them are not, some of them are not Olympians, and some of them too are not Olympic medalists as well.
Yeah.
And those who are Olympic medalists, none of them become world champions. That was Eddie Blay, Ikote Senior, Prince Amati. None of them have been Olympic champions. So I was thinking that Samuel Techi must win Olympic medal and also must be able to win a world title to break that jinx as well. So in my mind now, I'm fully supporting Samuel Techi.
Do you think he's on that trajectory to become a world champion?
Yeah, sometimes when you go to professional, it's not an easy thing. It's a very difficult, but in his eyes, he's yearning to do that. And so, in any way, I'm also supporting him to be able to do it because he himself knows within him that there has been Olympic medalists in Ghana, but none of them have been a world champion. So if he's able to make it to become a world champion, then that is also another step, another achievement. Yeah. So that is also a challenge that I'm always putting it to him. Anytime I meet him, I talk about it.
If you were his advisor, would you have told him to become a professional at this stage?
Well, turning professional, that one is a decision of the boxer. I always trust the decision of the boxer because most of the times.
But you're also the advisor. You're the person who's working with him. You know the qualities he has.
If I have Samuel Techi in my team now, why not? I'll be very happy because I know he can win a whole lot of medals for us. But the point is, he also wants to be a world champion, and there's age in all these things. And if you win a world title for Ghana, it's still for Ghana. If you win an Olympic medal again for Ghana, it's still for Ghana. And Isaac Dogbe took a decision which at that time is younger, and many people didn't believe it. And he was able to make it to the world title, winning a world title for Ghana. So who am I to say, unless he stay in amateur before he will be able to achieve something? Somebody can stay and at the end, he cannot achieve anything. You see, so my advice, I will want him to be with me so that I will be achieving a whole lot with him. But I think also that the decision must come from him, because that is when there are some decisions when you take in your life, and even when you either you succeed or you fail, you don't regret.
Let's do some football now. And over the years, Cool's football has given way to academy football in the country. The Minister of Youth and Sports, Mustafa Yusuf, says that academies in Ghana have produced some of the best footballing talents that we've got. He says that in partnership with La Liga, Ghana football will rise to its pinnacle and achieve the goals that the country is seeking to get to.
Going around doing scouting of players, and they use some of these facilities to scout young players to feed into the academies so that they will be able to develop them for our national team and also to develop them for the individual to develop their career. For sure. We have seen the benefit of it because as we speak here, we have young footballers who have passed through these academies, and today they are in our national team and they are doing so well. We can mention Kamal Din Sulemana, who went through Right to Dream Football Academy to Netherlands, to France, and now in England. Mohamed Kudus went through Right to Dream Football Academies. Netherlands now with Ayas. We have a good number of them. Nuama, who has just been called today, I just reading, he has been called to the under 20, under 20, the under 23 national team. He plays in Netherlands through Right to Dream. A lot of talent, and we want to collaborate with La Liga for sure to make an impact in the development of football in Ghana.
To African football, Morocco, they have joined Spain and Portugal to submit a bid to host the 2030 FIFA World Cup. This was revealed by a representative of the King of Morocco, Kaki Ben Musa, during a CAF General Assembly in Rwanda.
With that in mind, I would like to announce before this assembly that the Kingdom of Morocco has decided, together with Spain and Portugal, to present a joint bid to host the 2030 World Cup. This joint bid, which is unprecedented in football history, will bring together Africa and Europe, the Northern and Southern Mediterranean, and the African, Arab, and Euro-Mediterranean worlds. It will also bring out the best out of the best in all of us, in effect, a combination of genius, creativity, experience, and means. I thank you, and peace be upon you.
Morocco had attempted to host the 2026 World Cup, where they lost to Canada, Mexico, and the USA. Now they are back, seeking to host that of the 2030. Let's take a look at the format for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which was revealed at the 73rd FIFA General Assembly. It was a meeting of the FIFA Executive Council, which is ahead of the FIFA General Assembly that will be happening on Thursday. And this is what FIFA says, based on a thorough review that considers sporting integrity, player welfare, team travel, commercial and sporting attractiveness, as well as team fan experience. The FIFA Council unanimously approved the proposed amendment to FIFA World Cup 2026 competition format from 16 groups of 3 to 12 groups of 4, with top 2 and 8 best third place teams progressing to run of 32 of the competition. Don't forget, the number of countries that will be competing in the 2026 World Cup have been increased from the current number, which is 32, to 42. So the revised format mitigates the risk of collusion and ensures that all the teams play a minimum of 3 matches, whilst providing balanced rest time between competing teams. That's what the FIFA statement that came on Tuesday said. FIFA, in their email, also provided the international football window, which is going to happen 3 times next year, in March, June, and late September. So they say that it's going to mitigate the risk of collusion and ensure that all the teams play a minimum of 3 matches. So this will give them 9 points. Just as we saw the 2022 World Cup that took place in Qatar, the teams played 3 matches, which gave them 9 points. Unfortunately, your Ghana, my Ghana, got only 3 points out of those 3 matches that they played. It is another Wednesday, and it is another week where we take you to another youth resource center that has been left by the National Youth Authority and the Ministry of Youth and Sports to deteriorate, despite an investment of about $3.6 million into those facilities. We take you to Nyinahene and that of Yendi, where these facilities have been left to rot.
The Northern Region's Youth Resource Center is located in Yendi, and construction started on the facility in March 2018. 5 years on, the project looks abandoned and a long way from completion. While the stands have all been completed, the project has not seen any progress since then, with weeds and rubbish taking over significant portions of the facility. The grass on the football pitch has also been overtaken by weeds and largely overgrown. The paint on the tennis court is peeling away, and although grounds have been made for the running tracks, no sign of tartrans being laid. Parts of the roof on the VIP stand have fallen off, and the basketball and volleyball courts for now are just concrete slabs. In August 2022, President Akufo-Addo paid a working visit to the facility and said he was impressed with the progress of work. At the time, the contractor estimated the completed work of Phase 1 at 96%. 5 months since then, the president would be left massively disappointed by the state of the project in its current state, after failure to pay the contractor the remainder of his money resulted in the abandonment of the project. At Nyinahi, a community in the Achimemponya district of the Ashanti region, the story is no different. And sports enthusiasts and aspiring football players are peeved at the neglect of an almost completed multipurpose sports complex. The room compartments are housing spiders and cobwebs, while air conditioners and ceiling fans are rusting away. Dampness and moles are eating the white paint-coated walls, giving the walls some greenish-brown, unpleasant look of distress. The football pitch is strangled by weeds, with risky pits littered across the pitch. Parts of it get muddy during the rainy season, which is unfavorable for any sort of footballing activity. And now in the dry season, the pitch on the grass has been consumed by bushfires. The Nyinahin Sports Complex is a 10-minute drive from the main entrance to town, which is home to Isaac Esiama, the former sports minister and current member of parliament for the area. It was under his regime works began on the project, and even his own is not spared of the neglect. Vice President Mahmoud Bawumia visited the facility in 2019 and expressed delight at the progress of work. But that progress has turned to waste, with more than $20 million so far invested in the 10 youth resource centers across the country, with very little on the grounds to justify the mammoth spend. Dreams have become nightmares, and the wait for world-class sporting facilities across the country continues unabated.
Pius Enam Hazide, I hope you've just seen that. You were here telling us that you are committed to completing those facilities. Just gone by is a facility that an office that you served as a deputy minister worked so hard on ensuring that it was completed. And if you take a look at what Fentio has put together, it clearly tells you that you give us words and act differently. It's about time that people who have been tasked to manage our resources do not just run by us with political oratory that has put them into certain positions, but it's about time that you begin to act in the interest of the people you represent. When Isaac Esiama was the Minister of Youth and Sports, he committed so much resources. It was one of the facilities that was close to completion. But here we are, the playing surface, completely burnt. Just how much did it cost the taxpayer, you and I, to grass the place? And how much would it cost us to bring it back to life? You spend so much money building facilities, painting them, and in the end, you allow them to rot away, just like we have seen. It is terrible, and leadership in this country is becoming more terrible simply because you cannot just put in money. Your job is not to go on the field and work. Your job is to give people money to go out there and work. But what do? You prefer to use the money on other things. I spoke to someone who was telling me that people at the National Youth Authority, their core things they always want to attend to is to be traveling with the money that comes from the District Assembly's Common Fund. Until Isaac Esiama said, let's use a percentage of that money and do this. Quarterly, you receive about 10 million Ghana cedis. So it means that in a year, that's about 40 million Ghana cedis. And if you are investing $1.8 million on completing just one facility, and since 2020, you've not done even a single construction work on that facility, then I don't know the purpose. You serve as you claim you're serving Ghanaians. Muftar Nabila Abdullahi with AM Sports. We appreciate your company.
Perhaps it could be best described as the fisherman's biggest companion, the canoe or fishing boat. The scene looked like a seaport without the sea or a canoe landing bay, except that the sea was not close by. Shreds of the carved wood had combined with grass to give the canoe shop a carpet, Different canoes at different stage of construction. It's a canoe building site. Owning a canoe in a coastal town is a big deal and could cost you a fortune. Averagely, getting a canoe, an outboard motor, and a fishing net could also cost one more than 100,000 Ghana cedis. In Biwa, a coastal community near Cape Coast in the central region of Ghana, some young men in their mid-20s were sawing wood with their pencils in their hair, measuring, cutting, fixing and nailing. There I met Wisdom and his colleagues. Wisdom has been building canoes for more than a decade, and together with his colleagues, they're able to produce between 10 to 15 canoes in 8 weeks.
Chairman, good afternoon.
Afternoon, boss.
How are you doing?
Well, Grace.
I've been observing you for some time now. What's happening here?
I just want to dress the canoe to make it that, and when you put the net inside, it's not maybe tilted, and make it smooth.
Wow. Now, I would want to get personal bit with you. For how long have you been doing this?
Maybe 15 years now.
Did you start at a very young age, or you were schooling and then?
I just completed SHS. Then after SHS, there's financial problems, so I just want to stop it. So that when I learn it, I should take care of my family.
Where do you get the wood from?
We get it from maybe Sefiu or so, Fosu and other cities there.
And how tedious is it going for this wood? Are you the one procuring for this wood, or have other guys who do that?
We have somebody go and bring it, and we also just want to dress it. When someone come and buy it, and we are here, we just do it for them.
Right. Let's have a sit and have some more conversation with respect to how the whole process is done. So, when someone does it and bring it to you, for how long would it take for you to have a single canoe?
Maybe it takes maybe 4 days, 5 days. Then we just completed it.
Just one?
Yeah.
That is 4 to 5 days.
5 days.
Depending on the site, building a canoe would cost between 2,000 and 3,000 Ghana cedis. This does not include the cost of wood. Work on a canoe begins when a client, usually a fisherman, contracts masters of the trade for a canoe. Sometimes, the customers provide their raw material, basically wood, for the work to be done. At other times, and vice versa. Eventually, after 2 weeks of hard manual labor, they intend to finish work on an average size canoe for an eager client.
It costs maybe the small size costs maybe 12,000, 15,000, and it's over.
You mean cities?
Yeah, in cities.
And do we have the locals buying, or other foreign guys also coming to buy?
Oh, the local ones, and then the foreign ones also come and buy the same.
As per newly released data by Future Market Insights, the fishing tourism sector is estimated at $78.5 billion in 2022 and is projected to reach $254.9 billion this year.
Maybe as for us, when you bring them here, there's no people come and sack you or so. As we are, it's our handicraft, so we did it here. Nobody come and worry on us.
I've been engaging those selling wood for some time now, and they tell me due to the current economic conditions, they were not even getting wood to sell. That is some part of Accra. You are also using wood to carve your canoe. How are they giving you the same excuse? Because according to some of them, I understand that because of the transportation of cocoa from the hinterlands to this place, it becomes a problem. But from your perspective, is it that tedious for you to get that wawa from any other part of the country?
Well, as for us, it won't take much time for us. Well, maybe at least 2 months, 3 months. You see, those people who go and borrow it here, if this place is full, they take it to another town. So, like wawa, then we do. We didn't use any only the wawa that we used on the sea. If we can use sapali and all that, it will sink. So we don't use any type of only wawa that we use it here.
A whole log is slashed into 2 or more depending on the size of canoe to be made. The hull of the canoe is usually carved out of a slashed log. This forms the base of the canoe, and would determine the size of the canoe. Small logs are bent with great artistry and skill, ensuring the wood is bent and not broken. The bent logs are then nailed one after the other on the hull, gradually giving the canoe the height it should have. Wawa wood is what I use for making the canoe. This is because it would make sure the canoe does not sink. It forms the base of the canoe and would determine the size. Wisdom had a dream to become a military personnel, but later resorted to building canoes.
And now my mind is a soldier. Because at that time now I was SHS no, man called cadet. Now my father knew a soldier. Sometimes we to find the call camp. My
aim was to join the military, but that didn't work out. I was a bit stubborn at a point. My father threatened to arrest me because of what I do. So I fled to Togo. Things were hard when I returned, so I was working for a construction company.
Construction work now semi-force na mko yangu share fee. Sema miso
He tells me there are some spiritual beliefs attached to his work. He stated that he makes a lot of money from building canoes. He believed he could manage his business more efficiently if he had some more formal education.
Oh, this work is very hard. But say when you be out, why do you focus there?
You need to stay focused to do this job.
Sometimes, yeah.
There are times you have no food or water, but you still have to do it. Other times, the equipment we use does affect us.
I also say no internet and age maybe I was the same thing. It's a realist mistake when nearby about street. About the street. They be also we are careful. They be only obeying some crowd so we fruit him. Say Edmina way no one will be an answer, but Edmina way. But say Obia being different by show to me no. We prepare beer. Oh, you want to ask?
Is there any spirituality attached to this?
There is a lot of spiritualities involved in what we do, so you need to make sure we're in good terms with people. I'm not the only one building canoe here, so that means there's a lot of competition. When people realize you're good, they turn to you to work on their project. Due to that, it breeds a lot of hatred among your peers.
But talking about spiritualities, have you, since you started in the last 15 years, have you encountered anything of that sort with a particular person that you felt you got in jail and that was as a result of what happened with you and the person?
Some guy be also know the same things. But you know, na on visit or ye human interna on Wakulin. But in a human and yefe into of a crime is obey. But now men are not fair. So
if you're not spiritually strong, they will kill you. I've had some personal experience with some previous colleagues. I nearly lost my life.
Right. So aside the spirituality, I would want us to try something. I personally want to try something new here. So which of them do you think would be okay for me to try?
Okay, unless you take the hammer and the chisel.
So let me quickly come for the hammer and the chisel. So what am I going to do?
You hammer and chisel, no. Who said there's nails here. And the nails now one ubo punch.
Okay.
What do you just put it on the nail like this. You hold it tight.
Okay.
Hold it tight. If you didn't hold it tight, it will move and come and put it on the head.
My head.
Yeah. So unless
extra
careful.
So where do I hold?
Up hold it
or down?
Either you are going to be you are a newcomer. Okay. So you have to hold it like this.
Oh, okay.
And make sure that the hammer will not punch your finger. Okay. Put it hard.
Have to be careful.
Yeah, you have to be careful. This is your nail. You have to be careful. You point it well.
I'm now a new carpenter here.
So if you are an old one, so you hold it like this.
Yeah.
And you put it like this.
So that's when you apply more force.
Yeah, apply more force. Okay. But if you are a newcomer, you hold it like this. Once you are an old comer, then you put it like this.
But I wanted to ask, what are these holes for?
This is not because the moment that you put this one, you use that hole there to make this place smooth.
And within the last few days, 2 to 3 days, what's the recent boat you've done?
Yeah, I've done the other one there is at the beach. So if you feeling, I can go and show you there.
And that is bigger than this?
That is more 3 times bigger than this.
Right. So I will be heading to where you've actually done the other one. That is by just close to the beach side, and we look at how big that one seemed to be.
Next point of contact was at the beach, where he had some of his completed canoes. Walking through the crowd, the nauseating whiff from the fresh, dried and smoked fish almost made us sick.
Yeah, this is the canoe that I'm talking about.
Wow, this is very big.
Yeah.
But why did you choose the Atletico Madrid flags and all that?
It depends. Some use Italy, some use France, some use others footballers. But the owner of this canoe is an Atletico Madrid fan.
Oh, okay.
So he used the Atletico Madrid paint too.
Wow, so it depends on the team you support. That's how come. Okay, but I've seen some inscription there. Danyame.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's the person who was always is a church member, so always he asked God for maybe give him protection and everything. So he always say, Madanian Kopona, Mrs. Madanian Kopona maybe be a. This is where we put the hardboard motor here.
Okay.
And the engineer self sits here. That is. He himself sits here. And then you hold the hardboard motor, the head.
Yeah. This is my very first time having to experience something of this sort. We are here in Brewa in the central region of Ghana, and we look at this boat or canoe. It's very huge. That's almost 3 times of what we saw there. Now, when you look at the depth, that could tell you that if you're not careful whenever you're trying to climb such a canoe, you may have yourself injured. So you need to be extra careful.
The history of canoes dates back to time immemorial, and their invention can be traced to the ancient people who settled near water. People from all walks of life have used canoes for one purpose or another. It was mainly used for fishing, transportation, and war. For Joy Business, James Eshen.
when the e-levy came in, the government decided that the road tolls were going to be scrapped. Okay, so, but even before that particular budget was approved, there was chaos on all our tolling booths. So my boss thought it wise that there was no need for a life to be lost before this happened. And we knew that the good parliament was going to, give us the approval. So he wrote that it should be suspended. Okay, road tolls were only suspended pending the approval of the budget. Yes, we used to get around 78 million per year, and that's a lot of money and can do something. But then in the e-levy was a component of a chunk of money. If we had approved e-levy at that distance, and if the e-levy had worked the way it was conceived, I'm sure that we will not be talking about this today. But unfortunately, the e-levy failed us. It didn't work out the way we planned it. And that is why we are not talking about it. I know that over time, decision makers, the cabinet, the president's cabinet will come out again. If you are to introduce road tolls, why not? If you feel that we should, but let me also say that road tolls in Ghana was the least in the sub-region. You paid
in terms of how much
we paid. We paid 50 pesos. Meanwhile, they said, you pay 50 pesos, but you want to have quality roads like we see in the advanced countries. It's very difficult.
Well, that is how we kickstart our conversation on the big stories this morning. It all has to do with the road tolls, road and bridge tolls, to be specific. And you heard Deputy Minister for Roads and Highways there, Stephen Jalula, explaining away at why the road tolls had to be restored. But the question is, did we not see this coming? Were the writings not on the wall? And now that we've hit that brick wall, where do we go from here? With the increments that have been proposed, in some cases over 100%, some 400%, what is that going to mean? From motorbikes to saloon cars to mammy wagons and buses to trucks, heavy-duty trucks, there have been increments, twofold increments. Well, joining us for a conversation on that, we'll start with Engineer Mahama, a roads and building consultant. Engineer Mahama, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning, my big boys. How are you?
I'm very well. It's good to have you after so long. I'll start off the conversation by asking, did you see this coming? Was it clear that at some point we were going to come to this point?
Well, good morning to your first viewers. Your question, I think you have the answers on your archive. Yes. I think a day after the toll was scrapped off, I think I was the first to have put the people. And in fact, you can find it on, I think, most of the portals.
Engineer Mahama, I can hear you, but it's not so clear. Could you reposition yourself or speak a bit more loudly?
So I'm saying, can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I have some cold, so I'm managing it.
Sorry about that.
I'm saying that the question you're asking, you have the information right on your portal. JoyNews, Joy TV, you have all my audio and videos on that. I think a day after the tools were scrapped off, I came out first to condemn it, and I stated emphatically that within a year or two, we'll come and then we'll bring the toll back. I was very specific that within a matter of less than 2 years, this toll will be back. And so I'm not surprised that it's been back. If you check my Facebook handles, if you check my Twitter handles, if you check your news items on Joy, you have it there. It was absolutely wrong to have scrapped it off in the first place. Whether we have e-levy or not, the toll system must remain. So I'm not surprised at all that we are back to where we are, where we left off. So the decisions that are taken in a haste must be reconsidered. In the next time we're about to take a decision, extensive dialogue has to be engaged. I mean, you have to engage the stakeholders who are into the field, do a lot of analysis, get them to buy into your idea before you bring a surprise to the citizenry. This is out of. I mean, it's not non-negotiable. Bringing the toll back. I have stated even in those projections I made that a couple of samples were taken after the toll was suspended, and I can say that 100 or so %, if not 99, the motorists that were interviewed after the release were a bit surprised. On the contrary, they were thinking that they were going to have an increment. It was amazing that that decision was taken by a caucus of maybe some members of government who came in with this idea of cabinet also. That's my initial submission. We cannot do without the tool. We cannot do without it. And I've emphatically stated, which was just argumented by the deputy minister yesterday in your studio, that we are the least who in the world, not in the sub-Saharan Africa, in the world, our neighbors, Burkina Faso to the north, Cote d'Ivoire to our east, to the west, sorry, and then our eastern side, I want to jump Togo and Benin and go to Nigeria. These three countries, I wanted to have one industry country amongst the comparisons I'm making. They are charging an average of 5 Ghana cedis for a saloon car. And you were doing 90% less, which was 50 pesos. And then those of us who are using a pickup and SUVs were paying 1 Ghana cedi. It was so low in terms of what our analysis suggests us to do. If you have, 34 or 38 toll in Ghana, and you are realizing 72 million Ghana cedis, which is equivalent to $6 million equivalent now with a 12 Ghana cedi rate. $6 million can only do about 2 to 3 kilometers of a stretch of a road. 2 to 3 kilometers. That is from Joy FM to like Tesano police station. If you are supposed to do a dual carriage asphalt binder concrete course where you are putting an asphalt on the road from scratch, it can only do about 2 kilometers. That's the whole amount of money we are realizing at the end of the year. It cannot even do the pothole patching improvements in the country. So I, on some portals yesterday, stated that we should be bold enough as a government to come out with a realistic price. We should be bold enough to accept that we must have erred along the line. The stakeholders, the engineers, the issue of engineering, other professionals may have to come into the picture and analyze this like I'm doing this morning with you, so that the Ghanaians will move along with government when a certain percentage is proposed. I'm thinking that the 88 average percentage is still very low. I know I will have challenges with, some viewers who may not want to be analytical with the discussion we're having this morning. A 300% increment would have been ideal. The saloon car should have moved to about 260 average. So you can do a computation about the percentage. And the SUV should have been around 4 to 5. You are paying 25 cedis less when you get to Cote d'Ivoire with the high axle, heavy loading axle trucks, which are loading from our ports, damaging our roads, exerting extensive load on our roads throughout the corridors of the central corridor from Accra through Kumasi to beyond to Tamale and Bupe and beyond to Burkina Faso. Ironically, when they enter Burkina Faso, they are paying about more than 10 times what they are paying here per toll at one station. So if you continue like this, you will not be able to get money to improve on the quality of your road. So realistically, I was told yesterday when I was on one of the radio stations that I think they said it's a leaked document. If it's a leaked document at the time, then I think it's preferred that they should go back and do extensive consultation and come out with quite a reasonable figure. 2 cedis for a saloon car, in my view, would be the best way to start. And then as we move ahead in the years to come, we may make some projections upward. But that is the part of what I'm proposing to Ghanaians maybe accept. I'm not part of government. The government side is that we need to be transparent enough where we hear the Ministry of Roads and Highways led by the minister complaining that the people who are supposed to man our tools, the contractors who have been assigned the responsibility are under discovery. I mean, they are not accounting for the exact amount or averaging about, according to the minister's words, about 60% of the amount are being realized.
Right.
When you tell me that as a citizen, you are responsible to ensure that those people who are supposed to ensure that we get all the money account for it. So
a quick interjection. So when you look at the situation where it was touted, and we heard the road and highways minister even at a point say that the toll booths would be retooled, you know, some of them may be changed to toilets and all of that. First off, was that mere politicking, playing to the gallery to score political points? And secondly, you make the point that we're charging one of the lowest tolls across the world, if not the lowest. Considering the sub-region, considering our economic turmoil, does it make sense then for us to increase it by these margins on the back of the fact that the e-levy has been retained? Now, the argument was that the road tolls will be scrapped and the e-levy will come in and shore up revenue. The e-levy, according to Stephen Jalula, Deputy Minister for Roads and Highways, has failed. So this is going to be a double whammy then, because we're going to have the e-levy on board and the road tolls are going to be restored. And in many cases, per the proposal, it's going to be 100% increment. In fact, if you look at the outliers, you're looking at 400% in some instances. What do you make of these?
Well, I don't know which are the ones which are 400%.
So according to the Daily Graphic, the reintroduction will also come with an upward adjustment to the tolls by an average of 88.5%. That's the average, because some are about 100%, including outliers of 400%, the highest percentage increase, and 33.33%, the lowest increase. The details on the outliers we do not have, but that is what the Daily Graphic put out today. Whatever the case may be, even if it's 100% increments, okay, or 88.5%, as we're seeing it averagely, what that would mean is that people are going to have to come up with the e-levy whenever they transact and still pay road tolls as well.
That is why I didn't want government to be linking the cancellation of the tolls to the e-levy. I mean, to bring the e-levy to come and replace it. You could do, because this e-levy system is being operated in Eastern Africa, Kenya, and the likes, where, in fact, the same signal was, government was giving a warning about the failure of this system in other countries because of the percentage. So I just want to put it aside. I want to just say that if it has failed, let it somewhere. Government should still go in and see how best they can readjust the figures there to make it a bit convenient for everybody to be okay in doing the transaction with the movement. I just want to put my emphasis on this tool specifically. That let's speak like Suhum to Accra. You have a GP, RTU, and Protoa. They have their units. There are people who are standing by the roadside, advantage areas along the corridor, who are loading in the name of some of these transport unions. And they take, I'm just specific like Suhum to Accra. And you see some of these guys taking about 20 Ghana cedis per loading of a truck. Whether the car is half loaded or not, the buses, the small sprinters, and the urban, whether they are half loaded or not, this amount of money that these young gentlemen are taking along the roadside. How are we accounting for this money? If they are willing to pay 20 cedis at a loading junction or just at a snap point, I don't think we are far from paying a 5 cedis for an urban from the location. Now, you see, when we talk about this 88% to 100%, whatever, 400% fly order, you are just anticipating the figures from 72 million Ghana cedis to rise to within about 100. I think that daily traffic to capture that aspect as well. I got 120. This is still woefully inadequate to even maintain our roads in the capital alone, just in the capital for a year. And like I'm saying, we need to be objective enough. Government has to be more open in the discourse. And you see, some of us who are not with government are helping to shape the discussion on our own. I mean, all the risk and things that comes with it, you get it. But we are objective in whatever we sustain this objectivity over the years. That's why we have the capability of speaking on issues like this.
Right.
I am saying, the minister before last year, when he made the cancellation, gave some instances. Number one, he said there was congestion at the place, there was too much traffic, or whatever it is, so people queued in before paying 30 minutes before they move out of the place. You cannot be having a kiosk, a wooden kiosk like Ayimensa. You cannot be having a wooden kiosk like the one at the Bodia Road or the Dodua Road as a toll booth. You didn't make adequate provision for a properly designed toll where you can have a widened area for approaches and exiting of the toll booth so that the vehicles will not unduly delay their time they are paying. But we are moved from that side. We don't expect to have a physical edifice in the middle of the road for human beings to sit in and toll.
Right.
There should be gantries. We should have gantries as is being planted across the country where you have where you have a web camera. The cameras are posted up. If you only go to a toll area, you pass there, you see that there's a flashlight on your car after about 100 meters or 200 meters. Those cameras are supposed to capture every vehicle that is going across the toll.
Right.
Now you need to have these gantries there. Fortunately, government is engaging the national identification to synchronize all our data. So that's why when you want to register do your national identification, you are asked to bring your DVLA and everything as part of the synchronization system. When we are done with that, the DVLA must be tasked to be able to get every vehicle assigned to the owner. So when you are moving in this area, we have the electronic gantry version. You don't need to be paying physically at the site. Within a week or two, based on how they want to program their facilities, as I go past the gantry, the camera speak, and I get a prompt on my phone.
Right.
At the end of the week, I pay the money.
Right, and that will be a way of facilitating the process so that we don't have to go through the queuing system, basically creating traffic and all of that. But hold your horses for me. Let me also bring in, because you mentioned the GPRTU, you mentioned Protoa. Let me bring in Samuel Amwa. He is Deputy PRO with GPRTU. Mr. Amwa, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. What do you make of this recent reintroduction, or at least the proposed reintroduction of road tolls and the amounts that we are seeing? Averagely, we're seeing an increment of about 88.5%. In most instances, about 100%. What do you make of it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. What I would say about this reintroduction of the road tolls is that we, as an organization, transport organization, we are not against, bringing back the road tolls, because we know in every country there are road tolls that those are the money that they use to, fix, proper roads for us. And when we were paying the road tolls, the challenges we were having was that the monies we were paying, we were not seeing what the monies were doing for us, because our expectations was that we'll pay those tolls and our roads will be fixed. That is the main reason why, for some time ago, we were complaining. Okay, the minister came out that, they have taken the road tolls out because it causes traffic congestions, and, we also heard some time ago that there was some leakages, meaning there wasn't proper accountability when it comes to collecting of the road tolls. Now that they are bringing it, our expectation is that, like as a major stakeholder, there has to be some engagement and also to explain to us and to convince us that now this new measure that they are bringing in is going to help in terms of the traffic congestion issue, in terms of the leakages that they were talking about. But if today they just wake up and they say they are bringing it without this explanation, or without letting we that we are going to pay the assurance of paying the money and what the money is also coming to do for us. That is our problem. But as to bringing it back and even the cost, you know, formally we heard that it's going to be increased for about 400%, 200% thereabout. What we saw recently, we saw about 50% to 80% thereabout. We don't have much challenge, but the challenge we are having is how the system is going to be. Is it going to help bringing down the traffic congestion? Is there going to be still some leakages that we are going to pay money and we will not see the effectiveness of taking the money and what the money is going to do for us? That is our major problem now.
So for you, you don't have a concern with paying twice as much as you were paying before the road tolls were scrapped. But the issue is, if we're going to pay these tolls, then we must see what they are being used for. What exactly would you want to see in respect of roads?
Let me correct. I think the amount that they are now bringing is a proposed, one.
Right.
As to the double charge or charging it twice, when they call us to a meeting.
So that is the proposal. That is the proposal.
And we also, come out, or we also, when they engage us, we also tell them what we want, like we want them to do for in terms of the increments.
But as the GPRTU, before you go on, as the GPRTU, what do you want them to do? Would you prefer the former rates compared to the current rates? And mind you, Engineer Mahama has made mention of the fact that, and I've not independently confirmed that, but he has made mention of the fact that our tolls globally are one of the lowest. So if you compare to sister countries, even in the West African sub-region, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, and the others, they are charging many times as much. I just wanted you to know that before you go on with your submission.
I understand that side, but what we are thinking is if there has to be an increment, at least 50% will do. Because the one CD, we did not see what the money did for us in terms of fixing our roads. So now, if they say they are going to increase it by 100% right now, the assurance of what the money is going to do is our challenge. Now, coming back to the engagement, we are waiting for the ministry, most especially the transport ministry, to engage us, to call us to a meeting, so that we also tell them, or we also put our proposals to them, what we think they do for us. And also, one thing that we are looking for them to explain to us is how the system is going to be in terms of the traffic congestion. That is our major concern now.
So you feel that with the road tolls, traffic congestion will be back and that will hamper your work?
Yes, we think that, because we are thinking that, because if we are still going to use this old system, then now we have many cars in town now. So if we are going to still use the old system, then it means that we are still going to face this traffic congestion.
Now, you make mention of the fact, just to clarify, you are thinking that the increments across the board should not be more than 50%. That's what you're saying?
Yes,
okay.
That is what we are proposing. That at least it shouldn't be more than 50%. If 50%, yes, we can manage with that. Then we also look forward for them to use that money, to do what we are expecting them to use the money to do.
And by way of the roads, you're expecting that you see something when you engage them, for example. What are you going to say? You're expecting that they'll use the money to do what exactly? See to the roads so that maybe we can prevent more accidents, right?
Perfectly.
Okay. Perfect. But let me find out from you. Do you feel it's unfair? Because we were told that the e-levy was going to, cover up for the road tolls and all of that. We have retained the e-levy, but we are coming back with the road tolls. Do you feel that is unfair?
Yes, because when the tolls were taken away, what they told us was that they are bringing e-levy, as you rightly said, that one is going to help, and that one is also going to replace the toll. But now that the e-levy is there and the toll too is coming, it's a bit challenging. It's a bit challenging. That is why we are saying they should come out to explain this. When you are paying something and you get a proper explanation about what the amount that you are paying, that because of A, B, C, D, That is why things are going this way. Then the taxpayer will also, will not find it too difficult to us, too difficult to pay the money. But when it happens like, oh, I am bringing in e-levy to come and take toll away. Now e-levy is there. Now you are bringing toll back. Then it means we are lost. We are lost in the whole show.
Is this going to lead to any economic hardship for your members, do you think? If it is implemented, let's say, with the figures that we have, an average of 88.5%, some 100%, if that is implemented together with the e-levy, do you feel it will create hardship for your membership?
Yes, perfectly. It will create hardship because let's use Kaswa as an example. People that apply Kaswa and Accra, okay, some of them do, go for about 3-4 trips. You go, you pay. You come, you pay. And now the cost of spare parts are high, lubricants are high, taxes now, insurance has increased by 30%. All these things, drivers are paying. And if e-levy is there and you are going to increase the toll by 100% or thereabouts, it's seriously, or it's going to bring another economic hardship on our members. That is why we are saying that, yes, we are not against, bringing it back. At least it shouldn't go beyond 50%.
How sure are you that you can get an interaction with the sector ministry, whether it is roads and highways or transport? How sure are you that, some meeting can be secured so that you can share these views?
Oh, we are very sure the transport minister will call us to a meeting. And if we are looking forward and he's not calling, we'll write to him. Because we are...
So far there's been no communication to you?
Come again?
So far there's been no communication to you in that regard?
No, there's no communication at all.
And so you are awaiting, some information and then you'll espouse these views, right?
That's correct.
All right. Maybe finally, before you take leave of us, some of the toll booths are not in the best of shape. I mean, if you go on different stretches, you'd see that. In fact, some of them, I think on the Tema stretch, there was a truck that plowed into one of them right before, when you are entering the very first toll booth. What do you suggest as far as that is concerned?
Yes, what I'm suggesting is that they had a meeting, they planned before the thought of bringing the tool back. So if they had a meeting and they thought of bringing the tool back, they have to consider all those things, making sure that those places are properly maintained before bringing in all this. Because you can't just ask the people to come back and sit at the same place and be collecting the tools like how it is right now. And even there are some other areas when you go there. And I remember I traveled to Kede. When I get to Kede, I saw the toll booth over there. It was serious. So if they are bringing it, they should make a proper arrangement as to fixing all those areas so that we know that they are serious in what they are coming to do.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Amwa, for joining the conversation. Samuel Amwa is a deputy PRO with the GPRTU, and he has stated categorically that any increment shouldn't exceed 50%, that they are looking for the transport minister or the roads minister to invite them into a meeting, more of the transport minister, to invite them into a meeting where they can espouse these views. Two things: they don't want the tolls to exceed 50% based on the addition of the e-levy and the economic situation. And secondly, they want a roadmap. How will this money be used this time around? Well, let's also bring in Sairam Kawa. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast School of Business. Sairam, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, my brother.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We've had quite some discourse on the reintroduction of road tolls, from whether these were mere political shenanigans, whether it was apt, how much we've lost, how much more we could be charging. But I know you have particular interest in this issue of road tolls. Did it take you by surprise that we were backtracking, going back to the introduction of road tolls? And what does this new dynamic mean, looking at the increments involved?
All right. Thank you very much. For me, it did not take me by surprise. because on your station we talked about the cancellation of Roto, that it does not make economic sense leaving out the Roto, thinking about the range of e-levy coming in so that we'll harvest from the e-levy. E-levy is fraught with a lot of challenges, and we warned government at the time that this e-levy was practiced in Kenya and some other Eastern African countries, that it did not work. And so we should be careful when we are dealing with e-levy. And so I called on government at the time to reintroduce the Roto and reduce the e-levy to about 1% or 0.5%, so that we'll get a lot of people coming in. At the time, we also spoke on some of the toll booths have just been constructed around the Takoradi Highway. Cape Coast own has been done. We have one at Nogopo in Volta region. All these things that investments have gone into it, you took the decision to just say that maybe 78 million a year is no money, and you are taking it away. The reintroduction of these Rotos now is just telling us that government is indecisive when they want to implement policy. Our policy implementation is a problem, and there is a need for us to look at it very carefully, because this is not the only one. We have the TV license issue coming up. We have the luxury vehicle tax coming up. We have the other issue about first aid box in our cars. All these things were not well implemented. So there are good policies we can implement, but the approach to which we go about it is problematic. And that is what government needs to look at. Because they've now created a situation where bringing it back, increasing the rate, and look at the issues that GPRTU are now bringing up. How are they going to resolve these issues? That becomes a problem.
So where do we, I mean, looking at the latest dynamics, we have the e-levy on board. We are having the reintroduction of Rotos. I spoke to the GPRTU representative, one of their deputy PROs, and asked him whether he felt that was unfair. And he said yes. But on the other end, I mean, having both the e-levy and the reintroduction of Rotos. But at the same time, we've heard from Engineer Mahama, who also says, look, we have one of the lowest rates when it comes to Rotos across the world. And it doesn't even make sense that we cannot do without these Rotos. For you, where do you stick it, especially as we have this economic downturn to deal with? People are grappling with the harsh economic situation, and now we have to grapple with both. Where do you situate this conversation?
Yeah, thank you very much. For me, we should start from where we left. We should start from the normal rates that we have. Let people get used to the situation again. Right. And then we can now go ahead and do an increment in it. At the time, if it was increased by 100%, there wouldn't have been a problem. But we've cancelled it. And we've made people to believe that it is not necessary by giving reasons that are not tangible, that are not plausible. And so, for me, let us introduce it, but let's start from where we left. And when people are used to the situation, we can now come back to increase it and make the revenue we need from it.
Sairam, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Sairam Kawa is Senior Lecturer at the University of Cape Coast Business School. We also had, joining the conversation, Samuel Amwa, who is a Deputy PRO at the GPRTU. Engineer Mahama, I know you've waited patiently. In some 30 seconds, any wrap-up comments? All right, Engineer Mahama is not with us. Let us now cross over for that event coming up today as we mark World Consumer Rights Day. It's at the Coconut Grove Hotel. Let's cross over now.
virtually. So that's what's going to happen, and subsequently we'll end the program successfully. So as we move on, we'll quickly go for a goodwill message from our patron who is joining us virtually, Professor Stephen Adine. Let's put our hands together to welcome our patron as he gives us a goodwill message.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from beautiful home. I wish I could be with you this morning, but prior engagement means I must be in the court this morning. I'm glad that CIMG has risen up to the big question of consumer celebration. When the UN established, he had in mind the fact that in the world, everybody is a and they are serving. At the end of the day, everyone is a group. Let's finish. That's bomba written by Taylor Pierce. He had a interesting first end. That of the makes everybody was important. World of peace. By what people our choice that it makes wealth of nations. Not all but have founded in the past themselves, and then they become, and that's where now go ahead and started this global pandemic. Must come in and 13 that every of itself and the product receives. At this moment, GST is clean energy. One of the areas that we in Africa must both see when it comes to clean and potential, we have the biggest advantage in the sense that God has placed all of Africa in the tropical zone.
We apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. We're having connectivity challenges. So what we're going to do is that we will just pause on his goodwill message for now and continue with the program. Hopefully by the time that we're set for the panel discussions before that, we hope that we'll have a very clean line. Then we can talk to him or he can give us his message once again. So moving on, we'll officially get the welcome address from the National President of the CIMG, Dr. Kasati. Let's put our hands together to welcome Dr. Kasati for the official welcome.
Thank you, George. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Members of the Governing Council, Professor Stephen Adair, who is a past president, a fellow and patron of the Institute, who is joining us virtually, distinguished panelists, our media partners, JoyNews of the Multimedia Group, members of the CIMG, marketing students from both traditional and technical universities joining us virtually, and those of you who are here present, media men and women physically present and also joining virtually. Good morning to you all. Before I begin, may I ask all of us to be upstanding to observe 1 minute silent memory. Please, let's be upstanding. 1 minute silence in memory of the late Mr. Frank Appiah, a founding member and the first national president of the CIMG, who sadly passed on to glory 2 nights ago. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Please be seated. Thank you. As indicated by the MC, the subject of consumer rights here certainly was started by JFK, President Kennedy, based on 4 key pillars, which eventually were expanded into 8 pillars. Today, as we speak, Consumers International, a membership organization for consumer groups around the world, adopted these rights as a charter and started recognizing 15th March as World Consumer Rights Day. This day is now observed every year with the aim of raising global awareness about consumer rights and needs, as well as a day for empowering and championing the rights of consumers everywhere around the globe. The theme for this year's commemoration is empowering consumers through clean energy transitions. Recent increases in the cost of energy and the adverse impact of energy generation on the environment has made it necessary for our generation to work at empowering consumers to choose low carbon and less harmful energy sources. This requires adjustments and rapid transitions by consumers to new and cleaner types of energy that guarantees sustainability, security, and affordability in the long term. In Ghana, there is no known overarching consumer protection legislation, despite the different challenges consumers face, from product safety, guarantees, packaging, misleading advertising, to organizations dodging responsibility, among others. No consumer wants to take home a product that causes harm or unintentional damage. Consumers must understand that they have a right to be heard and a right to redress. Many product categories have mandatory safety standards determined in Ghana here by the Ghana Standards Authority, the Food and Drugs Authority, which pertain to such issues as packaging, chemical composition, ingredients, etc. We must proceed from here as a nation to recognize that consumers have certain fundamental rights, including the right to safety, the right to be informed, the right to choose, the right to be heard, the right for a pollution-free environment, among others. There are other rights endorsed by the United Nations through the United Nations Guidelines for Consumer Protection that we need to be aware of as a people. By respecting and protecting these rights, businesses and institutions can build trust and credibility with their consumers. The success of businesses depend on prioritizing the needs and interests of their consumers and engaging in ethical and responsible practices. The right to satisfaction, as endorsed by the UN, demands that people have access to basic goods and services. adequate food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, education, electricity, water, clean air, fresh water, unpolluted rivers, undegraded lands and forests. When consumers are satisfied with an organization's products and services, I can guarantee you that there will be fewer complaints and consequently there will be drastic reduction in lawsuits against organizations. As a society, if we can get to this point where we always put the total interest of consumer rights first, Ghana will be a better place to live. What are the expectations of CIMG as we commemorate this day? CIMG has chosen to amplify the importance of consumer rights and the need for continuous discussion in order to make positive impact in the lives of consumers here in Ghana. As a professional marketing body, which is mandated under Section 3E of the Chartered Institute of Marketing Ghana Act 2020 at 1021, we are instituting this day to be observed by both consumers and corporate organizations and institutions that are responsible for providing goods and services. Going forward, the CIMG will lead the conversation and continue to amplify and champion the rights of consumers. All organizations, including civil and public service entities and central government, must acknowledge and respect these rights unconditionally. The corner shop trader and the market man or woman must respect these rights. Ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies, likewise must respect these rights. Our good friends in the security services must see the citizens as patrons of their services and also respect these rights. Mining and quarrying companies must respect our right to cleaner and fresher rivers and vegetation cover by respecting these rights. Employers must provide recreational facilities for their employees as they need to exercise regularly, rejuvenate, and free their minds for improved work and productivity. Employers must be concerned about the food they provide for their employees in their office canteens, less fatty foods, low sugar content, alcohol and tobacco-free environment, among others. All these and more are consumer rights issues that we must address always. It is time for enacting adequate legislation to protect the rights of consumers in Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that this is enough to set the tone for today's discussions. Our eminent panelists are ready to dissect this subject from different viewpoints. Before I take my seat, however, let me announce here that the second edition of the Ghana Customer Satisfaction Index 2022 report is ready to be outdoored in the coming weeks. So also, excitedly, is Ghana's first ever regional brand index, which has been compiled by the CIMG. The dates for launching these reports will be announced very soon. From the Governing Council and the entire membership of the CIMG, I welcome you to today's all-important program, and I urge you to be very active participants so that you will leave here as very strong advocates for consumer rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kasati, who is the national president of the CIMG. Once again, let's put our hands together for him. We are live on JoyNews, so anybody watching us live on JoyNews, so you can tell your colleagues who wish to be here, but unfortunately cannot be here, that we are live on JoyNews. Let's go back to our patron, Professor Stephen Adai. This time around, we hope that the line will be very favorable to us. We're doing it more on the audio version rather than the video version. So his goodwill message once again. Yes.
Should I go now? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, compatriots. It's good that the CIMG is celebrating World Consumers Day today. It is unfortunate that I'm not being able to be with you because I have to be in Ho at this time. But it's good for us to join the fact that today is the World Consumers Day. In fact, it's an anomaly when we talk about Consumers Day because everybody, even the producers of goods and services, at one time or the other are consumers. And therefore, every one of us must be interested in the rights and protection of consumers. The reality is that oftentimes, most of the consumers don't have the capacity or the wherewithal in order to protect themselves. And that is where institutions like CIMG should be in the vanguard of consumer rights and protection. Let me say that there's often the emphasis on production of services and of goods, but the consumer is the king. And as one of the writers, Dr. Taylor Pierce of Sierra Leone, has mentioned, the consumer is not only the king, but also the queen, the president, and the chief. It's unfortunate that oftentimes he becomes the victim of unscrupulous producers of goods and services. For us as a nation, we must also take World Consumers Day very serious because the wealth of nations is ultimately determined by its consumption pattern. You can see that the developed countries consume what they produce and export to us, while developing countries tend to be mere consumers and not producers, especially of manufactured goods and modern services. It is therefore important for us to embrace Consumer Day not only as a right so that people are not cheated, but also that if we consume what we produce, we are creating wealth for ourselves and our people and for employment. Therefore, in either way, consumption is the pivot of economic progress. I wish everybody a successful Consumer Rights Day today, and I trust that this is going to be the beginning of a big play of CIMG, which I'm privileged to be your patron, to champion the rights of consumers in this country, both of locally manufactured goods and imported goods, that quality and meeting the standards will become the order of the day. I wish you a pleasant gathering and discussions and the beginning of a new era of consumer rights in Ghana. I thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Professor Stephen Adai, the patron of CIMG, with his goodwill message to all of us. Now let's move to the real caboodle. And I'm going to introduce our panel members. I'll introduce them one after the other, after which they will have 5 minutes each for their opening statements. Then we'll engage them. I'll ask them questions based on the theme and some of the things, the presentations they'll be giving to us within their opening statements. Then we can also extend the platform to you here and those also watching us virtually to ask them questions too. Our first panel member, a dynamic and transformational business leader with over 20 years of solid track record of building strong business fundamentals that drive sustainable values across the entire business value chain. C-suite executive with 10 years progressive broad level experience with leading multinationals within the FMCG space and at multicultural environment. He worked and has worked all over the West African sub-region, including AMT Foods Nigeria and SC Johnson & Son Incorporated, building and inspiring, of course, energizing teams, organizations with purpose and direction, driving game-changing business transformational objects and projects to drive efficiency, cost containment, and repositioning and repurpose organization back onto a sustainable growth. Building, driving an integrated commercial strategy, planning and execution in core consumer marketing, customer marketing, and sales function, and a strong general management experience. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for our first panel member, Kwame Wiafe. Next is a multiple award-winning marketing expert with over 30 years experience gained in fields of FMCG and telecommunication industries, including blue chip companies such as Millicom International Cellular, now Airtel Tigo, Guinness Ghana Brewery Limited, Vodafone Ghana Limited, and most recently at Nyao Medical Center. Expertise in marketing focuses on keeping the consumer at the heart of business decisions while driving profitable and shareholder value. She has participated in various leadership and business dialogues in Kenya, Nigeria, Egypt, Cameroon, South Africa, Greece, Portugal, and Spain, with extended expertise and executive roles in the UK, and of course in Namibia, and for that matter, Africa as a whole. She has served on boards of directors of Guinness Ghana Brewery Limited and on the Vodafone Foundation board. She holds a BA Honours and an MBA degree, both from the University of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for our second panel member, Agnes Emefa Asa. Next is Managing Consultant of the Family Office Africa. He started his career as a solicitor and the director at Lewisham Law Centre in England, and has played a lot of roles in England concerning his legal profession. Former Group Head of Legal and Company Secretary Opportunities International for 2010, former Group Head of Legal and Company Secretary Vodafone Ghana 2014, holds a postgraduate diploma in risk compliance from International Compliance Association in England. He holds an MBA in Wealth Management and Finance from Manchester Business School in England. He's currently pursuing a PhD in Business Leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for our third panel member, Theodore Albright. And then the final one. He's a business strategist, he's a lawyer, and he's a pastor. Very interesting combination. He holds a BA Industrial Arts, a postgraduate diploma Industrial Management, MBA Marketing, LLB, that's Bachelor's of Law, and also a barrister at law. He's a chartered marketer. He's currently a consultant general manager for the Ministry of Trade and Industries and Ghana Enterprise Agency under the Business Resource Center project. He leads a team of business consultants in providing institutional support and business development services to small and micro businesses within the partnership framework of government, international donors, and private sector stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, our fourth panel member, let's put our hands together, Reverend Manford Jessa Luthrot. Let's put our hands together. So like I mentioned, we're going to take 5 minutes opening statement from them, after which I will engage them for some minutes. Then you also have the opportunity to ask them questions. In the same order as I introduced them, we'll welcome first Kwame Wiafe.
Good morning. Good morning. And the patron, the governing board, and management of CIMG Ghana, distinguished panelists, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to be invited here today to share my perspective on consumer rights and protection in the FMCG space in Ghana. First of all, I want to commend CIMG for taking on this responsibility to bring visibility, awareness on consumer rights in Ghana. I think as a country, something that we have taken for granted for so long, to the extent that as we speak, there is no omnibus law that offers protection to consumers in Ghana.
So I think it is worthwhile that CIMG has taken on this responsibility to bring advocacy, awareness, such that hopefully in the shortest possible time, there will be a law to safeguard consumer rights and protection in Ghana. That said, I think a bit has been said about me. I'm Kwame Wiafe. I've worked my entire life in the FMCG space. If you talk of FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods products, basically these are basic products that we all use to meet our daily needs. Usually in the FMCG space, we have manufacturers as the pivot of that industry. Manufacturers who produce these goods and make them available for the consumer. Across the value chain of the FMCG, therefore, you have suppliers who normally typically will supply raw materials and input to the manufacturers. You have the manufacturers who will produce these goods. And then we also have the distribution chain. Basically, the distribution channel that enable the products that have been produced by FMCG companies to be made available to the consumer. If you look at the distribution landscape of typical FMCG, or if you look at the FMCG, you can broadly group them into 4 teams. We have the manufactured food side, you have the beverages side, you have home care, and you have personal care. So basically, all players in FMCG work across these 4 broad dynamics. And as I've already mentioned, the companies that produce these goods become the owners and therefore custodians of rights of all the products that are sold on the market. Now, when we come to consumer rights, I'm sure we have a legal person here, and so he will give us a better perspective of how the rights and protection are expressed in Ghana. But just to give a perspective that consumer right is basically to say it is a legitimate expectation of a consumer to an acceptable product. A legitimate expectation of a consumer that the product that he's going to buy will meet certain basic standard of quality, of quantity, of potency, of price, and all other dynamics. And then more importantly, that should there be any deviation, the consumer has the right to seek redress and to seek restitution or replacement or whatever the regime may be. Consumer protection, on the other hand, talks about the institutional framework to enforce the inherent consumer rights. That is to say, it is a matter of public policy, it is a matter of law. And usually, consumer protection is expressed in law, in institutions, in advocacy, and in self-regulatory environment. If you look at the FMCG space in Ghana, what are the typical concerns or complaints about consumer rights challenges in Ghana? Typically, the challenges relate to the product itself that consumers buy, various issues with the product itself. It also relates to the service around the product, and then it also relates to the after-sale service of the product. With respect to the product itself, some of the challenges that attend to consumer rights in Ghana include, first of all, just basic legibility or readability of information that have been provided on pack. If a typical consumer needs to have full information about the product that he's buying to be able to make the right information. However, because either because of low enforcement, there isn't much visibility on the readability of information that are provided on pack in most products, especially relating to imported products. And most of it, if you take the pack, is even just not visible enough to be read. There is also issue of sale of expired, unwholesome products in the market. There are various instances where either the producers or the distributors of products tinker with the expiry date of the product and try to make the product still available for consumers to buy in Ghana. And this is commonplace in the market. There is also issue of weight management of product. In view of economic challenges, some producers try to deal with the weight, either in liters or kilograms. Either they will reduce the weight and offer the same product. In some cases, where there is visibility about the weight, there is no problem. Or where there is credibility of the weight, there is no problem. But we have instances where companies are offering less weight and claiming the same weight. And that means that the consumer is being shortchanged. There is issue about compromising the quality of product, using substandard ingredients to produce, just to save cost. It's also a real issue in the marketplace. So these are issues relating to the product itself. When it comes to the product, that is the product experience, there is a real challenge of poor quality service at the shop, at the point of purchase. Most consumers don't get the right service when they make themselves available to buy product from the shops. And then if there is issue with the product, there's also a real challenge of seeking replacement. I think it's a cliche for you to read. In most shops, goods sold are not returnable. Or in some cases, if they offer to return, they will tell you goods can only be returned within 24 hours or 48 hours, which is a real challenge because in some cases, before the consumer will pick the goods to use, the 24 hours or the 48 hour is already gone. So that is also a real challenge. And then also, there is also a real challenge for the consumer, even if he wants to avail his rights as to how to do that, what mechanism, where to go to, who to go to, is also a real challenge. So these are some of the challenges that attend to consumer rights with respect to the FMCG space in Ghana. Now, why are these challenges pervasive? Why are they available? They are available because of what I call, first of all, weak strategic orientation of the country. I believe consumer rights protection ties in strongly into the orientation of the country to offer good service to the citizenry. And because that orientation, unfortunately, is weak in Ghana, it allows, for example, for importation of various substandard goods into Ghana. The reason why most shops will tell you goods sold are not returnable is because most of the products that shoppers sell are not produced in Ghana. And therefore, if they should take them back, they do not have any recourse to the supplier. And more also, it is also easier for anybody to import products, even with wrong labeling, sometimes foreign labeling, Arabic labeling, languages that the ordinary consumer cannot even read into the country. And there are no enforcement mechanism. I dare say that if Ghana is to take its citizenry seriously and want to enforce consumer rights, it could even tie into promoting a lot of made in Ghana products, because I can confirm that most of the established companies, credible companies in Ghana, would or do try to make sure that they offer appropriate consumer rights to the consumers. Another challenge I see is also about weak protection mechanism by established institutions already in the system. I've already mentioned, we do have some institutions that attempt to deal with consumer rights in Ghana. We have the Food and Drugs Authority, we have the Ghana Standard Authority, These institutions are there to try to deal with consumer protection issues in Ghana. Unfortunately, as I've said, either as a result of unwillingness or inability or lack of the political will, these institutions close their eyes to some of these basic infractions and allow the market to be flooded with a whole lot of substandard, unacceptable products, and the enforcement mechanism is usually very weak. Another challenge that I see is also about the political economy, and it is tied to the institutions. So we have a lot of weak standard products, low standard products in Ghana, but the question is there a political will to deal with it? I believe that is also weak because in most cases, the political elite or the ruling political establishment do not want to be cast in the bad light. Or in some cases, some of their sponsors are the people bringing in some of these substandard products. So it becomes difficult for this to be dealt with appropriately. And then, finally, there is lack of defined consumer guarantees in Ghana. So if you are a consumer and you go and buy a product and the product is defective, what do you do? There are no defined guarantees as to what you do. If you are lucky and the product you bought is from an established company like Nestle or Unilever, you may have some cause of redress. You could approach these companies, and I know that some of these established companies inherently for business sustenance and continuity and to protect their credibility would come to your aid and meet your, try to address the need. But if it is outside of these established players, then there is no recourse to the consumer. And then the consumer, if he has the appetite and the resources, will need to go through painful legal process that most people shy away with. So legitimately, there is no simple guaranteed process for an average consumer whose rights have been infringed upon, who have bought substandard goods, who have bought unwholesome product, who have bought substandard weight product, to seek redress. And I think this is something that has to be addressed if we need to protect the right of consumers in Ghana. What is the way forward? I think there has been recent attempts to put in place a law. I'm aware a draft law is available. I will encourage for the law to be promulgated as soon as possible. But before the law is promulgated, I will encourage that deeper consultations are made to the law. I believe that I am a player in the industry, but I do not think that enough consultations have been made to the law. And I think that since the law has not been passed, it should be extended, and both consumers and players in the industry should be consulted to make sure that we come out with something that will stand the test of time. And finally, I think the state actors that are clothed with the responsibility to protect consumer rights need to be up and doing. I think to a large extent, they are failing the consumers in Ghana. I believe they have the legal framework, they have the resources, the wherewithal, to be able to do a bit more than they are doing to safeguard the rights of consumers. And I think the earlier they do that, the better it is for all of us as consumers in Ghana. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rafi. And let's put our hands together once again for him. That's when we move on. And I mean, one thing he talked about concerning labeling, it's something for me, I think, in Ghana, we should be very serious about. I spent some time in some Asian country, and when you go to their shops to buy products, you can't even read anything on that product because it's not written in English. It's only for their market, and it's written in that Asian language. But when you come to our part here, there are some shops you go in there is nothing on that labeling that is even written in English. Yet we allow it to be in our shops, and I think it's something we need to look at. We're also live on Facebook. That's the Chartered Institute of Marketing Ghana, Facebook Live. So you can just quickly go to the CIMG page and just share that page individually on your page and to others too. And also live on JoyNews. Like I mentioned earlier, Kwame Rafi spoke to us coming from the fast-moving consumer goods point of view. Next is going to be on healthcare, still on the same theme we're talking on. So let's put our hands together to welcome Agnes MFA Essa.
So good morning, everybody. I think all protocols are already observed, but I'd like to just acknowledge the Governing Council, and I'm really proud that CIMG has taken this thing as an important day that we can institute. Because as Kwame Wafi said, the previous speaker, there's very little awareness about, consumer rights in this country. And I've had the privilege of working across various industries, alcohol in terms of Guinness Ghana breweries, as well as telecommunications, Vodafone Ghana, and now in healthcare. And it's across that there's a lot more work that needs to be done in terms of reinforcing, collaborating, and raising awareness about this topic. So, but before I go on, just when we say healthcare, it's very broad. The value chain, includes suppliers as well, pharmaceutical industry, there's, the hospitals, the clinics, it's huge. And then the allied health in terms of laboratory and diagnostics. But I'll focus a bit more on the hospital and the clinic side, because that's where I've had a bit of a exposure. And so I think Kwame Wafi said it, what are the rights? When you say rights, what does that really mean? I mean, everybody who buys into anything, whether it's a service or a product, has a legitimate wish that whatever they are buying is what you say it is. But I think it is also important to know that when there are rights, there's also the issue of responsibility. And many people don't recognize that even the consumer has a responsibility in playing, in understanding and enjoying the rights that are available. My topic is about the enforcement of consumer rights in the healthcare industry. So before I go on to talk about what structures there are currently that govern the industry, I'll just talk a little bit about what are some of the rights that anyone who is a patient should think about. And we talk about the fact that the world has moved into a place where it's no longer just about the patient, but it's also about the family. Because sometimes the patient is in a state where they can't even really communicate, but the family is also involved in that care. So every person, all of us could be a patient at any point in time, need access to quality basic health care, quality, and then information of what your condition is. It should not be kept, you should not be kept in the dark. You should know what you are dealing with. And then you should also have the right to know who the identity of your caregivers are. You need to have the right to be able to consent or decline to participate in anything that you don't want to participate in. At least you need to understand if it's surgery or whatever it is, you need to have the right to say yes or no. Privacy during consultation treatment is also very important because nobody wants their information to be discussed in full view of everybody else. So confidentiality is a key right that all patients desire. The other thing that is important is clarity and understanding of how much you need to spend on this particular procedure that you're going through. And then every patient has the right for a second medical opinion. So if you're not happy about what you're being told or you're not very sure, nothing stops you from seeking a medical opinion elsewhere to be sure that, okay, this is what you're being told is right. But as I've said, it also goes with responsibilities. So for it to work, a patient or anyone who's seeking care in the healthcare industry must cooperate with the healthcare provider. You must ask questions, but you should also have full disclosure of what your medical history is. Because we had some situations during the COVID era where people came in, they had COVID, they knew they had COVID, but they didn't say it. And so transparency from the patient or the consumer side is also important so that the healthcare providers give you the best care. The other thing that is important is complying with the prescribed medication. Because if you're given medication that is to be taken a particular way and it doesn't, really follow, you don't follow it, then you will not get the best benefit. And if there's anything that is in your situation in terms of your adverse reaction or whatever to the medication, you have the responsibility to inform the healthcare provider. So these are just a few of the rights and responsibilities which I think is important as the law and so on becomes established. People should be able to be aware, to be able to make use of these in order to get the best health care. And so what are some of the enforcement regulations that we have? I mean, And I think my previous speaker also mentioned the fact that advocacy, self-regulation, and promulgation of laws is important. And so in all the industries I've worked, self-regulation has been critical for us. So, for instance, in the health industry, you do have health services regulation agencies. You have HEFRA, you have Nurses Midwifery Council, you have the Ghana Dental Medical Association, Pharmaceutical Council. They're all there. So they provide some form of guidance. But what is critical is that even for the health institutions themselves, you have your own code of ethics that you establish. So for example, I'll give an example. The Yahoo Medical Center reaches out to International Finance Corporation, the health section, as well as Joint Commission International. These are international bodies who come to help to structure and put in place policies, because even the staff need to understand what are the rights that the customers have and what are the rights that they have, even to ensure that there's safety and there's zero harm. And so these bodies help with structuring, putting in place things to monitor, things to report on, and things like near misses are used as learning opportunities. So if there was water and somebody could have fallen, that's an opportunity to be recorded, to listen, to see how else can you improve on things like that. So these regulatory bodies are, very important. And so whilst we wait for a law for Ghanaians to be able to really take advantage of, these are the ways that as a body, even with Chartered Institute of Marketing, we should be able to sensitize other organizations, particularly smaller organizations, because in the multinationals and so on, it is very clear that there's always the guidance from headquarters and so on. But how much more if we took up these things ourselves and ensure that people to ways to self-regulate. So until the law fully comes into place, you can still self-regulate, and that's important. But what does that mean in terms of future? Because as technology changes, and we even experienced it during the COVID era with telemedicine and all these things happening, and the role of telecommunications in healthcare means that data privacy and security is becoming even more important, because your data will be shared across multiple channels, ensuring that it's safeguarded and is protected so that the people don't have access to it is one of the things that is going to be very critical as we're going into the future. The other thing that is important is for laws to be able to stay abreast with what is happening, because we're at the stage where we're now still trying to figure out and establish a proper law for consumer protection for Ghana, and yet things are moving at a fast pace. So when you talk about technology changes, social media and all these things, that has to be included in the law, and then adapted, because things are happening all the time. Regulation is, moving, not the regulation, but the social media is moving at a very fast rate, and therefore we need to be able to incorporate all these things so that people's data and privacy is still secure across multiple channels. So the only other thing I want to say here before I end is that I think that consumer advocacy groups is going to continue to be very critical. And I would encourage that as much as possible, everybody, all of us are consumers. So when we see anybody driving any consumer agenda, we should feel free to participate, contribute, and support the cause, because that's the only way that you would also be protected. Today it may not be your turn, but another day it could be your turn, because all of us could either be a consumer or a patient at any point in time. And so just to round up, I just want to reiterate the point that this is a very important topic. I have had the chance of working in 3 industries, and it's definitely important across all those industries, even though I've seen that in the multinationals, they draw a lot of guidance from the foreign headquarters and so on. I'm happy to say that companies like Yahoo Medical and others are also leaning in and working with international bodies to understand what is going on in the world and to do their best. The whole idea is to continue to improve as a person who's offering a service every day, to improve so that the customers and our patients and all of us can get the best care possible, because that is our right and we should ask for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's do it again once again for her. A friend visited a hospital, one big hospital in Ghana, and during treatment, Agnes, this friend decided to ask questions. And the doctor was like, Charlie, who kasadodo? He wanted to know exactly what the doctor is doing, what kind of medication and all that. The doctor said, you are not a medical doctor, I'm the doctor. Well, he was giving whatever prescription. Unfortunately for him, he didn't take it until he used a different medical facility where he was allowed to ask questions. When we get to that stage, we'll see how best we can explore further. Now we'll move to the next stage, which is got to do with telecommunication. And let's put our hands together to welcome Theodore Albright to give us that presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to stand on the previous protocols and just say this. Opening statement. The wealth of our nation is predicated on consumption, because consumption is a key driver of economic development. The wealth of our nation is predicated on consumption, because consumption is a key driver of economic development. Where is the champion, the voice for the voiceless? In the age of communication, I have no champion. I have no avenue to communicate my complaints in a coordinated, cohesive fashion. Isn't that ironic? And yet, that is what we're presented with. Because we're not given an opportunity, we don't have an opportunity to have a champion, a singular champion, whose role is to speak on our behalf. And so because there are disparate channels of complaints, it gets lost in the noise. In this digital age, where technology is ubiquitous, AI, blockchain, platform technology, communication is now a human right. Accessibility, affordability, availability, awareness must come as standard. I'm speaking on the subject of consumer rights and telephony. Internet, value-added services, mobile money, big data, digital. And frankly, like Agnes said, technology, and by that I also mean telephony and telecoms, is so pervasive in the area of health, banking, education, travel, work, commuting, industry. It is ubiquitous. And yet we have no champion to stand and speak on our behalf. And frankly, the current situation is rather reactionary at worst, anticipatory at best, and there's no proactivity. Yes, we have the NCA, that great Leviathan beast. But if I lose 20 cedis on mobile money or my data, am I seriously going to make a complaint to the NCA? Come on, guys. Yes, I might reach out to the telco once or twice or three times, but when you get frustrated and there's nobody to voice out your frustrations, you're left to pick up the pieces. And you do what? Nothing. So yes, there is a complaints procedure with all of the telcos. And if you don't succeed, you can go to the NCA. But like I said, if I lose 20 cedis, am I going to go to the NCA? If I lose 10 cedis, am I going to go to the NCA? if I keep canceling my subscription for that ringtone and it keeps coming back, am I going to go to the NCA? Come on. We need a champion, one who will stand up for us and say, come and let me speak on your behalf. And that is why this channel, this platform is critical. Well done and kudos to you, CIMG. It is critical because unless I have confidence in the products I use and the services I use, I ain't going to spend my money. I'm not going to spend my money. And we're not going to see the concomitant development that ought to take place. How is it that some organizations, institutions, can give lifetime warranties on their products, and you can barely walk out of a shop before your guarantee expires? Before you unwrap it, your guarantee has expired, your warranty has expired. Yes, the consumers have rights when it comes to digital telephony and the telcos. Right to access, right to a variety of services, settle some claims, opt out of unsolicited messages, privacy, notice of interruption, compensation. Please, hands up. How many of you in the last 30 days who have had network issues, who have had drop calls, have had the nerve to call up the telco and say, guys, uprame? Nobody does, because the existing channels, quite frankly, are not fit for purpose. And when you don't have an avenue to complain, then in the end, you won't spend. So again, I say, where is the champion? That champion ought to be in a commission, ombudsman. Where is Kofi Kapito? With total transparency. Processes are opaque, they're disjointed. I really don't know where to go. I really don't know if I have a complaint, save for maybe phony star, I don't know where to go. And I'm certainly, really, truly, honestly, if it's not a lot of money, going to go to the NCA, because it's not worth my while. So who is going to support the small person, the small business, the man who can't speak for himself? We've talked about self-regulation. And at the moment, that is what we have, because we don't have an all-encompassing, cohesive Consumer Protection Act. It's a bill, it's coming, but it ain't here yet. But you see, I speak to the telcos, and I want to go beyond the telcos and speak to industry and speak to SMEs in general. There is sustainable competitive advantage if I can trust in the product and service that you're offering me. Word of mouth will travel 1 mile for good service and 7 miles for bad service. If I have a bad experience, I'm going to tell everybody. The network drop. As for here, be blank spot. As it be like the tower, no, they work for here. Echuni ye BNA, meaning enye juma waha. Enra me to 1 cedi, and then I come in 20 pesos, and I haven't made any calls. You know, fundamentally, the bulk of the users and the consumers sit within the bottom of the pyramid. How are their rights going to be addressed? Who's going to do that for them? Sustainable competitive advantage, reputation, in terms of character and capability and competence, has a value, and you can add it to your value proposition, good enough is no longer good enough, guys. And I'm not bashing any telco. I'm just saying that systemically, we have no structures. Everything is opaque. Nothing is transparent. You know, to the extent that when you look at the SDGs, poverty, hunger, health, education, gender, clean water, clean energy, decent work, innovation, inequality reduction, sustainable cities, responsible consumption, climate change, climate action, below water, above water, all of these are predicated on that channel platform called telephony. And so our friends in the telco sector are in an enviable position to be the backdrop and the backbone for our infrastructure development, economic recovery, if they will. So let me paint a picture for you before I go. A world where my 10 pesos is accounted for, my 20 cedis is accounted for. A world where I know my rights because it's not shrouded in opacity and it's transparent. A world where I know I have a champion who's going to speak on my behalf. A world where I know that the service levels that have been promised will be delivered. Quality, safety, education, value, choice, privacy, all of these are within my purview. And I repeat, with the ubiquity of technology, unless we have a champion across board, but my brief is to speak on the telcos, unless we have a champion who speaks for us in the telephony sector, then we will have problems growing to become the Ghana that we ought to be. And I'll take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leo. Let's put hands together once again for Theo. Thank you very much. I think yesterday and 2 days ago, there's a particular telecommunication network here in Ghana. It was difficult for you to make a call. It was difficult for you to even send mobile money. And then just thinking about we Ghanaians is that it's normal. Everybody's quiet. We're fine. Nobody's talking. Let's move on. And the danger for us as a country is when we begin to see some of these things as normal. That's where the danger is, because a time will come where the wrong things will be normal for all of us. And building a society like this, there's no good future for such a society. So this morning, we're starting a new day. Everything is fine because the problem has been resolved. It's normal. Let's move on. But sometimes those normal things actually cost us a lot as a nation. Let's move on. This time around, it's going to be on a legal perspective. And let's put our hands together to welcome the Reverend Manford Jessa Luthrot. He is a business strategist. He's a lawyer and a pastor. That's a great combination, I would say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Chairman, CMG, members of CMG Governing Council, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I also want to stand on the protocols that have already been established. And it is a great honor to be part of this conversation or the discussion this day, even as we mark the World Consumer Rights Day. I think a lot have been said by the panelists and, of course, by the moderator as well. We need to focus our conversation and our discussion on the subject of consumer rights. And the various speakers have given us indication as to what constitutes a consumer. And I believe that a consumer, in a more stricter sense, and for our conversation today, can be defined as someone who buys or acquires goods or services for direct use or ownership rather than for resale or use in production and manufacturing. Of course, there are institutional buyers or institutional consumers, there are organizational consumers and all that, but I believe that we want to be looking at, in a stricter sense, the end user or the final consumer as individual members of the society. From the point of view of the law, rights can be seen or can be looked at from different perspectives. Rights basically are the fundamental norms or normative rules about what is allowed of a person or a people and what is owed to a people. So what is allowed to a people or to a person and what is owed to a people or a person according to some legal systems or according to some social convention or ethical theory. So rights are derived from legal systems, rights may be derived from social conventions, and rights may be derived from ethical theory. And they constitute the fundamental normative rules or principles that a person is allowed or that is owed to a person or a group of people. And up to this point, I think we've all been made to realize that we are all consumers in one way or the other. At any point, everyone is a consumer of a commodity or a service of a sort. So we all are consumers. And so when we're talking about consumer rights, it's about everybody. It's about everybody. AFTA is with us. And as we know, AFTA is looking at a market of a population of about 1.3 billion. And all these 1.3 billion people that we are talking about consumption, people who are going to consume goods and services. And as it has been said by the previous speakers, consumption patterns and actually consumer behavior directly and indirectly impacts on the wealth of nations. So it is very important for us to seriously look at the rights of the consumer, because at the end of the day, if a producer or a manufacturer produces a commodity or an item, it is expected that the commodity that is produced will be consumed by or will be bought or acquired or used by an end user or a consumer. So this is how we need to approach the subject of rights in the context of what we are going to talk about today. Now, when we talk about a contract of sale of goods in particular is a contract whereby the seller agrees. It is an arrangement between a seller and a buyer. So a contract of sale of goods is a contract whereby the seller agrees to transfer. Okay, the seller agrees to transfer the property in the goods to the buyer for a consideration, which is called the price. So when somebody is selling a commodity or an item, I am interested to buy that item, and maybe the price that he puts out is, let's say, 100 Ghana cedis, but I said, I can offer you 80 Ghana cedis for this item. And the seller agrees to sell to me that item at 80 Ghana cedis. At that point, a contract has been established. A contract has been formed between me, who is a buyer, and then the seller. And once this transaction is regulated by a contract, then there are some legal underpinnings to the transactional relationship between the buyer and the seller. And so it is important for us to address the fact that the consumer has rights, because at the point that the contract is formed between the seller and the buyer, and the contract is formed, then it creates some rights, it creates some duties, it creates some obligations for the parties. So once there is a contract of sale between a seller and a buyer, it creates some legal relationships. And based on this legal relationship, there are rights, there are obligations, there are duties, there are responsibilities of each party to ensure that the transactions or the contract that have been formed between the parties are enforced. And in fact, in contracts, there are also, by law, capacity to buy and sell. So nobody, you cannot just sell anything at any age or if you don't have the capacity. So capacity gives you that legal power to be able to engage in in transactions. And in Ghana, such legal transactions are regulated by law. From what we have heard from the previous speakers, it appears that we are very much concerned about some omnibus laws or some laws that are really put together, to address specifically consumer protection and consumer rights. I must say that from my experience of the law in Ghana, I believe that there are the bodies of laws in Ghana. There are a lot of laws that really has to do with rights of the citizen and by extension the rights of the consumer. There are a number of laws in Ghana we can have the Constitution, there are enactment of Parliament, there are rules and others and regulations, there are the common law and there are existing law. So all this hierarchy of laws and all these laws that are in existence, though they may be scattered, but there are a lot of laws in existence that we have not even tested the law at all. We have not really stretched the law to the extent that the rights that are, as I said, rights are owed, or applied to individuals or groups. But I believe that there are a lot of laws or quite abundant body of laws that when one has an issue, one can really seek redress in the law court. For instance, in the torts law, a tort is an act or omission that gives rise to an injury of harm to another, and it amounts to a civil wrong for which the court imposes a liability. Okay? So the primary aims of civil laws or tort laws is to provide relief to the injured parties. So if you went to buy a product and you were injured by the product because the product was not safe, or maybe you want to buy a drink and you saw some impurities or some impurities that are settled at the bottom of the bottle, you feel injured, and that but your injury and the law of torts, you can seek relief or redress from the law courts. And I believe that if you are injured as a consumer and you speak to your lawyer, you will definitely get some relief from the courts. I endorse the fact that we need to have a kind of laws that are put together to address specific issues of the consumer. But while we are not there yet, and as it was said by the previous speakers, we have a bill in respect of consumer rights, which is still awaiting passage in Parliament. I believe the bill has been there for over 10 years. Just recently, I heard from the Minister of Trade and Industry talking about the fact that the government is going to give a very serious consideration to the passage of the bill to become law or an act of Parliament. Let's hope that it comes through as quickly as possible. But while we are waiting, I still believe that there are a lot of laws that are available, whether from the constitutional perspective, whether from enactments, passed in Parliament, whether in rules, regulations, and others, whether there are common laws, whatever, there are all bodies of laws that consumers can take advantage of. And I believe that as we go through the conversation and the discussion of this morning, we'll be able to go to the specific laws that are in existence that are able to address the specific injuries that individual consumers incur in the course of their consumption. I hope that as we travel along, we'll be able to address all these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend. And let's put our hands together once again for him. So we've moved to our interactive segments. What we're going to do is, if you have any question at all, just note them. You can write them down. And those joining us virtually, if you have any question at all, just also note them. I'm going to engage them for some minutes, after which I will just hand over to you if you have any question or any thoughts to share with us, or any questions for them at all. There are 1 or 2 questions I've picked on the JoyNews platform, of which I'll ask later. But let me start with you on this note, Reverend. There are microphones on the table. You have microphones that you can actually use. Reverend, you mentioned that there are lots of laws that actually talks on right, lots of laws. But if a consumer has a problem with a company, is there a particular law that that consumer can rely on? Let's just say a telecommunication company, and I have challenges with that telecommunication company due to their services. Is there a particular law that I can actually rely on and take that telecommunication on? Yes, Reverend.
Well,
yeah.
Yes, if, let's say, a consumer of telecommunication service, something goes wrong, obviously, I believe that when we look at the Public Utility Regulatory Commission, which has been established to regulate some of these matters, a consumer who has been a consumer whose rights have been infringed upon because a service provider has not been able to meet his needs very well can seek redress through the commissions. Okay, so there are a number I may not be able to cite specifically, but I can assure you that there definitely are rules and laws that if you talk to your lawyer, depending on the nature of the wrong, depending on the nature of the wrong and depending on the nature of the liability, I believe that definitely there are laws that will be able to assist you in dealing with your issue.
Okay, we have Theo. Yes. Yes, Theo. Yeah.
All right, so I hear my learned colleague, he keeps saying, and when you speak to your lawyer, and when you speak to your lawyer, I am a lawyer.
Okay.
But how many people, A, want to go to a lawyer to resolve their 20 cedis? Yeah. B, how many people can afford a lawyer to resolve their 20 cedis? So there should be a single point of contact, a single place that I go, and I know that my matter will be resolved. There are about 20 different legislations governing the telcos alone, all right? And then when you add on all the other industries, you're looking at about 100, okay? You need to have intimate knowledge of contract law, offer acceptance, intention to create legal relationship, consideration, in order for you to have redress. And what we're saying is that it ought not to be so. I don't want to go into a forest full of laws to go and find out which law applies to me. I want to be able to go one-stop shop, one person who tells me this is how it is, and all the operational background. So if we have a Citizens Advice Bureau commissioner or an ombudsman, that will save us all the wahala. And that's not taking money or meat out of the lawyer's mouth, because there will always be work for us lawyers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Quick information, we're going to go off on JoyNews, but those watching us on JoyNews and others, we can quickly get us on the CIMG Facebook page. We're streaming live there, so we're going off JoyNews anytime now, actually. Let me move to Agnes. Within the health sector, you might know the consumer protection rights.